Good morning. Oh, this is not good.
Just turn your volume
Work, I'm working on
up.
it. Where is my volume?
Steve's dancing.
Okay. Good
All right.
morning. Welcome to the regular meeting of the BOCC on Wednesday, February 22nd. I am joined here in the room with Patty Clapper, and the online we have Steve Child from Alaska, Greg from his house, and we're hoping to get Kelly before too long. She is stuck in the traffic, which I just spent almost 2 hours in. And we had a very scary incident in the county this morning at the school, so I just want all the parents to know I am really feeling for what they went through, and I am so happy that it ended the way it did, and looking forward to hearing about who would even consider perpetrating something in such a way. Um, we're going to begin with whether or not we have any additions or deletions. Rich?
I don't have any additions or deletions, but there's a consideration, and I don't know if you saw an email, Francie, I just received it from Jeanette Jones. It said that there's a few people stuck in traffic that wanted to come to participate in public comments, and they were hoping that that could be pushed to later so that they have an opportunity to comment. And they
Okay.
also had something in the minutes, the approval of the minutes. There was some issues they wanted to talk to you about on the minutes as well, so.
The people who are
Certainly up
stuck
to
in
the board.
traffic? Uh-huh.
Yes,
Um, Okay, well, if they show up, then we will consider doing it before we get to the land use items. I think,
sounds good. Other than that, nothing else.
okay.
Do we need to make an amendment to the agenda? Do we need to vote on that, or are we just good to go? Can the chair just call it?
I don't know the answer to that. I'm just gonna, do you, right?
Yeah, I think the chair can just direct the procedure to open public comment again at a later time in the meeting. It sounds like you were intending to do that before
Yeah.
land use items,
Yeah,
so I think that's fine.
okay. And so we will put off the minutes until later as well, the consent items. So do we have any public comments at this time? Do we have everybody on, Nicola? If you are online and wanting to comment, if you could raise your hand. I don't think we do. Okay. And nobody in the room to make public comment? Okay, so we will close the public comment time for now. And do we have any commissioner comments?
Yeah, I just want to just reiterate what Francie said. We did have a very scary incident this morning at our school system, and it ended in a good note. We apologize for the confusion for families not knowing about picking up kids or not. I think we can definitely use this as a learning experience, and we were trying to change some of our notification processes from our last incident, and I think that is ongoing, and so I think if anything, this will assist us in getting notices out there in a better manner. Hopefully never having to do it again, but it's always good to be prepared just in case. We would rather not have to do it again, but I know it was scary. It was scary for me with kids in elementary school throughout the valley and in childcare. So just want everybody to know our thoughts and prayers are with everyone, and everyone is safe. And it is snowing crazy up here, and so for the people who are trying to get up to our meeting, we apologize for Mother Nature doing what she's supposed to be doing this time of the year, which is to snow. So that being said, be careful, be safe out there, and we just have March right around the corner next week, so.
So more
hopefully
snow.
we'll have it. What? And we'll
More
get more
snow.
snow. We will get more snow. And there's a special event happening here at Rio Grande Park this weekend, and the crews are trying to set up the enormous tent facilities, so I hope that they're staying warm. So thank you, Francie, and we can move on.
Greg?
Yeah, thank you. Just as a parent, it really was a shock to get that early call. I was I just want to say that I was really gratified to see that and hear that the law enforcement responded very expediently, and we had law enforcement presence at the schools, and the lockdown went according to plan. My own kids reported that they were in lockdown in a safe place, following the protocols. So on their end, I think the drills and the work that's been done in the, to prepare for events or circumstances like this, I think has been good. So I want to congratulate the people who responded. I'm sure lessons will be learned, but I also want to say this is it's also demonstrates that the training has been done with law enforcement and with the schools. This is also an event that's statewide, I'm told, not just up and down the Roaring Fork Valley, but apparently this spoof was something that spread statewide. So I really do hope we can locate and capture the individuals who perpetrated this, and hopefully that we won't see that again. Thank you, and I'll be tuning in here today from home. Thanks.
Thank you, Greg. Yeah, I got calls from my grandchildren down in the Carbondale schools at CRMS that they'd been locked down. All the schools down Valley were locked down. I know this very hard on students when this happens at all the schools. So I also hope we can figure out who did this and talk to them about it, if nothing else. Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Thank you. I was really disheartened when I got the call from John Peacock this morning, just shortly after I woke up here, up in Fairbanks, Alaska. But I'm glad that the incident is turning out all right. And I note that Kelly sent a text message when she was stuck in traffic saying that we are doing a community mass evacuation experiment today, is how she worded it. And the roads were totally jammed up. I think it was a lesson that we need to learn from. If a whole bunch of people need to go somewhere all at once, all in their cars, this is what's going to happen, is have massive traffic jam. So I hope we can improve our public safety for natural disaster kind of things. Hopefully we don't have to do anything like this in the future, but this was maybe good practice today and a wake-up call for us. And I want to share one picture on the screen. This is the lights thing, and I have to unblur my video here to make that work.
Wow.
So this was the other night. This is just one picture of the Northern Lights, the Aurora Borealis,
That's
the
amazing,
official
isn't it?
name of it.
So beautiful.
It was the most astonishing thing I've ever seen in my whole life. I wish everybody could experience it standing directly underneath the Northern Lights when they are just, it's like this living being up in the sky with the different lights moving around. In this case, now sometimes they're more stationary and you don't see them moving around, and I've seen them quite a few times when they weren't really moving, but it was like the heavens were opened up above us. We're out there in minus 10-degree weather, standing there in our slippers at my daughter's house, looking up at this spectacle, and it's just an experience that I'm so glad I got to have it. I hope other people can have a similar experience to that. So welcome from Fairbanks, Alaska, where spring is, winter days are getting longer now, and we're getting more and more light here, so it's pretty nice.
Thanks, Steve. I have also seen the Northern Lights. I lived at Denali Park, which we called McKinley back in the day, and in a tent, and for several months, and got to see them then. So it is a pretty amazing experience. Any further commissioner comments? All right, we're going to wait on the reading of the minutes under the consent item, but we will look at the resolution to appoint citizen board member. In this case, it's Alex Keloff to the Communications Board So I'm going to look for a motion to pass the resolution to appoint him to the Telecommunications Board.
I will make a motion to approve and to say that Alex had a very incredible resume, and I think it's exciting to have him on the Telecommunications Advisory Board.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right, so we're going to take a vote, and this is pursuant to Section 2.8.4 of the Pitkin County Home Rule Charter. And all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye, so it passes 4-0. And then we have a confirmatory reading and public hearing, so I will open the public hearing. An emergency resolution of the Board of County Commissioners of Pitkin County, Colorado, approving an intergovernmental agreement between the Board of County Commissioners of Eagle County, Colorado, and the Board of County Commissioners of Pitkin County, Colorado, regarding the housing of Pitkin County detainees at the Eagle County Jail. But I'm pretty sure Alex is, has been the incident commander today, and I want to thank Alex for doing that. So I'm assuming you're his.
Yeah, I can cover it. Francie,
Proxy.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Richard Neely, Assistant County Attorney. As you said, this is a confirmatory reading of an emergency resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement between the Board of County Commissioners of Eagle County and the Board of County Commissioners of Pitkin County, Colorado, regarding the housing of Pitkin County detainees at the Eagle County Jail. The BOCC approved this on the emergency reading on February 8th. Today is the confirmatory reading as well as a public hearing. Staff's recommendation is that the board approve this on the confirmatory reading after opening the public hearing. Unfortunately, I really don't know much more about it and can't answer any questions, but if the board has any right now, I'd be more than happy to pass those along to Alex, and I'm sure he can come back and chat with you all when he's not otherwise engaged, so.
Okay, Patty?
Yeah, I'm assuming there aren't any changes. I think Alex would have let you know.
There are not any changes, or at least there are any changes that I've noted in the
Okay, in the reso itself.
in the resolution itself.
Well, I want to thank Eagle County, the sheriff, Sheriff Van Peek, and also the Eagle County Commissioners and Eagle County Manager for assisting in this. And I know we've had some issues with the Glenwood Canyon closure with transporting our detainees to and from, and we're also looking at options and opportunities for that. So I think this is great. It shows, first, it shows mutual aid that we give throughout our valley and throughout the western slope and hopefully throughout the state of Colorado. And I think that's important when you live in a rural community, especially with mountains and canyons. So I want to, again, thank the Eagle County staff and crew for helping us out.
And is there anybody in the public who wants to comment on this resolution? Okay, I'm going to close that public hearing then, and I'll look for a motion to pass the emergency resolution.
I'll make a motion. Okay, I'll second.
Okay, it's been a motion from Greg and seconded by Patty. Any more comments? Steve?
Yeah, thank you. I also would like to thank Eagle County for getting us out of a bind and letting us keep our inmates there on a short-term basis. I note that we are making some progress on expanding the safe portion of our existing jail, so it would be hopefully within several months it will be ready to have our inmates, a limited number of them, come back and be in our own facility. And that's really good news to me that we have a partial fix to our jail problem. It's not the final solution, but it's getting us in the right direction. And also I note that we have agreements. We work with counties all over the state, including Prowers County and La Plata County, Garfield and Eagle County on, we've worked with Boulder County and Larimer County in previous years on different things. And it's really heartening to see how different counties across the state cooperate with each other and help each other out. And so I really appreciate Eagle County helping us out in this situation.
Thanks, Steve. If there's no further comments, all those in favor of passing this resolution, please say aye.
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 Thank you, thanks, Ryan.
Okay, it passes 4-0.
Thank you.
Individual consideration items. This is first reading, set for public readings on March 8th, 2023. It's a resolution of the Board of County Commissioners authorizing the Colorado Department of State Help America Vote Act Grant Award. And we have Ingrid and Clint here to talk to us about it.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for being here.
Thank
So,
Francie for being here.
Yeah, it was
are
a journey.
these-
Lisa,
is this
too.
on, Miguel?
Ryan. No. Red lights on?
Oh, there it is. Maybe it was just the light. Okay, well, we have received a grant award from the Department of State through the Help America Vote Act for the purpose of purchasing Dominion Image Cast X ballot marking printers. These will remove the QR code from the ballot done through the ICX. And then the new ballot will be machine readable, look identical to our mail ballots, to increase anonymity. And they will be capable of duplex printing more than the 14 inches. In 2022, we had an 18-inch ballot, so that will be good. The price is $7,580, and the grant is a sub-grant so that I think roughly $6,600 comes from federal funds and the remainder from state funds.
Right.
And you should have everything in your packets. So if you have any questions, I brought the technical guy in case you have technical questions. And so,
I don't have any technical questions. Anybody
No.
else?
I'm just glad now because we'll have a lengthy, in all ways, lengthy ballot especially in 2024,
probably.
possibly. So we want to be able to print the whole thing. So I think this is great, and I'm grateful that we have the funds and you applied for a grant, and we can get it moving forward.
And you did a great job describing it to us the last time, so I think we're ready to roll. So do we need a motion to move it along to the second reading?
I'll make a motion to approve this resolution and move it for second reading and public hearing on March the 8th.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and that passes 4 to
Thanks.
0. Thank you, Ingrid and Clint.
Yep.
Okay, the next one is individual consideration items. These are second readings, so this is open to the public. This is a resolution of the Board of County Commissioners of Pitkin County approving a collection agreement with the United States Forest Service regarding management actions to promote beaver utilization of headwater streams. And Lisa McDonald, I think, is going to present this for us. Hi,
I think
Lisa. And Lisa.
actually Lisa Tasker is.
Okay.
We just
Her
switched back and
baby.
forth.
Yeah.
And yeah, we may have Clay Rainey.
Clay?
Do you have
Yeah,
him?
he's on. We just need
Okay.
to-
Okay.
Fabulous.
Good.
Thanks. Just wanted to make sure that he is there because he is available. Yes. Yeah, that would
Yeah,
be great.
please.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Those just work for grassroots. We can hear you if you just speak to us. This is just for taping.
Great. Okay, yes, Lisa Tasker, here with the Pitkin County Healthy Rivers Program, along with Lisa McDonald. And yes, this is our this is the second reading, our third time coming in front of you all regarding the agreement between the Healthy Rivers Program and the White River National Forest. It's called the Collection Agreement, and this is the second reading. And this agreement is to investigate and implement actions to promote beaver utilization of our headwater streams up on federal land in order to promote watershed health and occupation by native aquatic species. So very official, and there's Clay right there. If anybody has any extra questions, we did get from the Forest Service just the other day the final document with all of the edits, and the only thing they did edit, I did push back and say what edits were they? Was there anything that was of any consequence before I'd combed through the document? And they said no, it was just some grammatical errors. So everything is exactly the same as presented at the last
Okay.
resolution.
Hi, Clay, welcome. So do we have any questions
Thank you.
for these guys, from commissioners?
I just think it's exciting. We
It's so
can't wait, we
exciting.
can't wait to find out what the numbers are and what the next steps will be after that. So, thank you for bringing this forward, and I just think it's gonna be fun. We did have a lot of discussion both at the work session and at first reading, so I'm ready to move it forward.
And do we have any comments from the public about the beaver study that we're about to approve? Greg?
Yeah, thanks. Public can chime in, I guess.
I
Thanks
don't,
for
yeah, I don't see
recognizing.
anybody. You see
I
anybody,
just
Mikel?
want to say I'm really enthusiastic about this. I'm hoping that we have a chance for some citizen science along with it, as we've discussed before, just so the public can be aware of what's going on and hopefully participate. And it's this sort of activity that helps, turn our kids on preservation of the natural world and protection of important resources. And then my final question is just tongue in cheek. It's like, we're reintroducing all these wild animals into our neighborhood. Are we going to be, we going to have packs of beavers attacking our children? We have to worry about this?
Do beavers travel in packs, or is there a different word for beavers?
Actually, it's called a swim, I think.
A swim of beavers. Great.
Steve?
Well, what Greg just said brought up a memory. If I can diverge just for a moment.
Oh, not Steve
When my daughter was in the 4th grade, I was driving a school bus in those days, and I was driving down the Capitol Creek Road, and there was a roadkill beaver in the road by one of the creek crossings. So I picked it up and put it in the car and took it with me. And I had been doing a dissection class, helping the teacher out, dissecting, pig's eyes and flowers and fruits and fish and different things. So we dissected that beaver.
Oh, Steve.
And that was in the class with, all the kids in there. And I think that was the most memorable thing. They still bring it up when I see some of those kids as grown-ups now. They remember doing that, and it was incredibly interesting seeing how a beaver is adapted to living underwater a lot of the time, and being able to swim with webbed feet and all these different things were really incredibly interesting. So that's my divergence. Now for a question. How are we going to use this information when it's determined how many beavers there are? I imagine that we might use it for getting some beavers introduced into some river areas that maybe used to have them in the past but don't have them now. Because I see beavers as a way of kind of backing the water up and helping the wetlands in the sort of high elevation wetlands becoming more of a sponge to hold water for later in the summer. To me, it's really a good thing to do to keep the water back and up in the high country as long as possible. So that's what I am imagining, but I want to hear from the Forest Service and from Lisa Tasker. What are the plans with the information we get?
Go ahead, Clay.
Hi, everybody. We'll see. We may find that we have places that we think will hold more beavers than it is currently. Or we may find that we have some habitat improvement to do. We don't know what we'll find. I suspect that we'll find some underutilized habitat that maybe would benefit from amping up the beaver.
Uh-oh.
Oh, he just froze.
Uh-oh, you're frozen, Clay.
Population.
Oh, you're back.
You're back.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay, Lisa, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I don't have a lot. I don't have a lot to add to that. I mean, I do think that, you know, the consensus is that they're still recovering from their 400 years of persecution and almost extirpation. They're actually still in recovery mode from that, which is kind of fascinating to me. And yes, the idea is if there's areas where they don't exist right now and that have, you know, excellent habitat, you know, what's the possibility of going ahead and introducing them or moving them, or what's the possibility that they'll move in on their own? I mean, there's a whole lot of questions to ask and to answer. And I think the interesting thing is we have a whole group of people that will be getting together, it sounds like potentially on March 9th, that are very interested in understanding what this effort is about and how they can potentially participate and what, you know, so we'll see what happens with that. So we're getting all of the people who are very interested in beavers in our watershed kind of coming together in this effort on the outskirts of what Clay's full intention is to get the 2 interns out there and get this baseline inventory done, right? And that's our intention too. So we have some information, some real information that we're working with, not just computer modeling and that kind of thing, which is what is done with something called the BRAT tool. You may hear about this later, but so there are exercises that you can do with software where they look at habitats and they say these areas, according to, you know, this input into our data and into the software, should potentially support beavers. Well, what Clay is going to be doing is they're going to have folks on the ground that are going to really tell the real story and tell, you know, whether there's beaver there or not, and really describing the habitat in real time. So that's what's really exciting about this. It's not just a software exercise. So yeah, but yeah, so that was a long answer, Steve, but we do have, there's a whole lot to this, which is really exciting. And I think we're just sort of dipping our toes in. Clay obviously is doing a whole lot more than that, but we're being the support system behind. We're saying go Forest Service. So we're going to be very excited to see what comes out the other end, and I think we'll really be able to look at that data and make some really nice decisions on what we want to do with it and what looks important to us.
Great.
Great. Is there anybody in the public who would like to make comments on the beaver study? If so, you should raise your hand. And I don't see any hands raised. Anybody in the room who wants to comment on the beavers? Okay, so I'm gonna bring it back to the
motion.
Yeah, great.
I'd make a motion that the board approve this the beaver study with the Forest Service.
Okay.
I'll second.
I look forward to the moonlit nights we hear the call of the beaver again.
Okay, I have a motion from Greg and a second from Patty. Any further comments?
Yeah, I want to know what a beaver call sounds like. It's just the smack of the tail on the water, right?
Tail slap.
I think we'll keep it at that.
And Kelly has joined us. Hi, Kelly. Glad you're off the roads. Okay, I'm going to ask all those in favor of passing the resolution to promote the beaver utilization of headwater streams to say aye.
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 Thank you. Thanks, Clay. Nice to see
And
you
that
again.
is 5-0 as well.
Okay, thank you, board. I'm
Thanks, guys.
excited.
Thank you,
Safe
Lisa.
out there,
Thank you,
please.
Still
Lisa.
looking for housing too. If
Oh
anybody
yeah,
knows.
housing.
For those interns.
For the interns, yep.
I thought beavers built their own houses.
You're on a roll this morning, Greg. Okay, the next we have a resolution of the BOCC approving an application to the Federal Aviation Administration to impose passenger facility charges to fund equipment and capital improvements at the Aspen-Pitkin County Airport. And we have Dan with us. Hi, Dan.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thanks. So Dan Bartholomew, Aspen-Pitney County Airport Director. So today's second reading, seeking your approval of the resolution to apply for Federal Aviation Administration approval on a passenger facility charge collection and authorization to expend the funds for our 12th passenger facility charge application here at the airport. Basically, and I mentioned before, the first reading, a passenger facility charge is really an additional fee that goes on to every usually every commercial ticket in the airport, in the U.S. For airports for commercial travel. Aspen Picnic collects at a $4.50 charge, and this can be put away into a bank and then used for specific projects that meet with FAA approval. The projects we're using here are passenger boarding bridges to accommodate a possible slight change in the fleet mix to an E-175 aircraft here, but can also still accommodate the existing CRJ-700 aircraft. Some snow removal equipment to replace some of our aging snow removal equipment, reconfiguration of some of the aircraft parking places to accommodate that E-175 aircraft, a security backflow preventer device between our bag claim and our passenger waiting areas, and then also for the consulting services to prepare this application for the FAA. We have public noticed and had consultations with the airlines, and they were in agreement on these projects. That is pretty much where we're sitting on this one, just seeking your approval of this resolution and your signature to send to the FAA.
Okay. Do we have any questions or comments from
No,
commissioners?
thanks, Dan.
And is there anybody in the public who would like to comment on this? Okay, then I'll look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve a resolution authorizing the filing of a new passenger facility charge application number 12 with the Federal Aviation Administration. This is a second reading, and I will move to approve.
I'll second.
So I have a motion from Patty and a second from Greg. Any more comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thanks, Dan. Be
That
safe out
also
there.
Passes 5-0. Thanks a lot, Dan.
Thank you.
All right, next we have a resolution of the BOCC authorizing the Community Funding Partnership Contract CFP 2022-40 between the Colorado River Water Conservation District and Pitkin County. And Drew, are you going to talk to us about this?
Yeah, hi everyone. Drew Walters, Ag Specialist with Pitkin County Open Space, and I'm here with Paul Holsinger.
Yep, Paul Holsinger. I'm the Agriculture and Conservation Easement Manager for Open Space and Trails.
And we don't really have anything new from last reading, but we did want to just go over a map as a refresher of where this pivot will be located. And Paul is sharing the map right now. So this is the pasture. It's agricultural lease B on Glacier Open Space, covering approximately 80 acres of pasture with sprinkler irrigation. And again, this is a project that's reducing our water usage from our water right from 4 CFS to about 1.9 CFS. That'll require us to continue maintaining the ditches and utilizing that water in other uses on the property. And so, that's giving us some additional flexibility. The historical use of this property and how it was allocated in the past, we had more leases than we currently do, but some of those leases were taken out of agricultural production simply because they were not feasible based on the current water infrastructure. And so this is allowing that flexibility in the future. They might not be agricultural leases, but we'll at least have the flexibility to utilize that water elsewhere on the property. Part of this community funding partnership is going to be using those funds, and we're already in the process of doing that. So using those funds to have a system that's capable of variable rate irrigation, which increases the precision throughout the property, since it is a pretty variable pasture. to irrigate heavier on certain parcels and then less heavy on others. It also gives us the ability to rotationally graze the property by being able to swing the center pivot in either direction. The Aspen Global Change Institute was gracious enough to give us one of their older soil moisture stations. And so we're going to use that funding to increase the capacity of that in order to do on-site monitoring of soil moisture to help better understand infiltration rates and things like that.
That's great.
So we're gonna be using this as an opportunity to study impacts of this change of irrigation, since it is pretty substantial. The benefit that we really want to see from this is increased pasture productivity.
Okay, do we have any questions for Drew or Paul?
Oh, thanks, guys.
Any comments from the public about this?
Steve
I'm
has
assuming
his hand.
not. From, yes, Steve?
I do have a question for Drew. The hearsay from people who have put in sprinkler systems on their property around here is that they see resurgence of the Wyoming ground squirrels on their property, which are like little half-sized prairie dogs. They must be very closely related to the prairie dogs. And I was going to suggest that would be a good thing to monitor on this property. I don't know if there are, I presume there probably are parts of the property that have these ground squirrels on them right now, but just to see if they do move into the field when the sprinkler system is put into operation, and maybe figure out some method of controlling the ground squirrels without putting out poison, because I think that's what a lot of ranchers end up doing to try to control the problem, is poisoning them, which I don't think is the best solution. But is that something you could keep your eye on when this, as part of managing the property? I'd be curious to know the outcome.
Thanks,
I
Steve.
brought that up last time, Steve. Thanks for bringing it up again.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so that is certainly something that I've heard from the neighbors as far as ground squirrels being an issue in that particular area. I think it's definitely something we're going to be monitoring. My hope, though, is really right now we have only about 30 of those 80 acres that are effectively irrigated. So my hope is that, you know, with the sprinkler irrigation on a larger area of that pasture, it might almost help the issue that we have. And we do still have those ditches maintained. So as far as implementing different management strategies, as far as continually flooding some of those areas with pulse flood irrigation cycles, we will have that management tool at our disposal. But certainly that's a great point, and it'll be something we're looking out for. And I'll make a note to report that out at the end of the year if we do see a significant increase.
Okay, Patty?
Is that because flood irrigation fills their burrows up and
Yeah.
they don't like to swim, they like to shower?
They just go to your neighbor's house.
Oh, okay. I'm like, I'm just trying to figure out, close my eyes and see what they're doing, and that was the first thing that pops
Yeah.
up. That's interesting.
Well, at the Flying Dog in the summers, they have a vet from the Iran War, I think, who was a sharpshooter, come in, and also my grandson likes to participate in this as well. And they've killed up to 1,000 ground squirrels, and you can't even tell the difference. It's like
There's that many out there.
there's so many, it's unbelievable. It's just it's crazy.
Well, maybe we don't need to do a beaver habitat count of your ground squirrels then.
There's a few more badger
Most of us
holes
can't
out there.
count that high. So. Okay, well, if there's no further comment from the public or from the commissioners, I'll look for a motion.
I will make a motion to approve a resolution of the Board of County Commissioners authorizing the community funding partnership contract between the Colorado River Water Conservation District and Pickett County.
Second the motion.
Oh, let Steve have it.
Okay, I have a motion from Patty and a second from Steve, and I'll look for all those in favor to say aye.
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 And that also passes 5-0.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I have a quick question. Before we go to land use, can we take a little break? and
Yes,
then
I
we're
was going to suggest that we take a 10-minute break here. We're still waiting, I think, for some people to either arrive or tell me they're coming on Zoom. I'm not
And then
quite
we'll do
sure.
some public comment.
And then
before-
we'll do public comments before we move on. So.
All right, great, thank you.
So we will take, we'll be back at 12:51 Grassroots. Welcome back to the regular meeting of the BOCC on Wednesday, February 22nd. We're going to do something a little different here, actually, if we could just hold off on the Elam presentation. We're going to listen to public comment. We didn't have a chance to open the public comment before, so I see Ellen, and I think she's the only person, unless we have somebody online, Michaela, for public comments. Okay, let's start with you, Ellen. Come on up and introduce yourself.
Thank you. It only took me an hour to get the 10 miles from Aspen Village. I heard it took an hour to get from the airport, so I feel lucky, and thank you for readjusting. Actually, I have three. Ellen Anderson, concerned citizen, Aspen Village resident. Three very quick.
Can you speak up for the
Yeah,
people in the room?
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Can you hear
just,
me? Okay.
it won't come through this in the room,
Oh.
so you just have to speak loud to the people in the room.
I will.
Thank you.
I will project. I have three very quick things. The first one was I wanted to take the approval of the minutes off the consent agenda because I would like to suggest a correction for the minutes. Have you already approved the minutes?
We have approved.
Oh, great.
We have not.
Okay. My correction is under the February 8th meeting, under the public comments section. The minutes only say, it says the following members of the public spoke, and it's been recorded, and if you want to know what they said, you have to go to the website, Bill Dinsmore and Ellen Anderson. I think it would serve the public and the public record better if you just had like 5 words about what we said. And what I would like to suggest is, for Bill Dinsmore, you say, he commented on Elam gravel pit emergency operations issues, and that Ellen Anderson spoke, I distributed Aspen Flyride essays to commissioners who wanted them. Just so it's in the record in writing, and people don't have to go to the video to find out what we said. And that's just a suggestion. I'd like to change to add that to the written
Making a note
minutes.
And I think Rich is making a note too.
Yeah. And then number 2 was for agenda item number 2 on today's agenda, and it's kind of a catch-22 because it's I don't know if this is the appropriate time to comment, but it's about the order in which the Airport Advisory Board runs their meetings, the order of the agenda items. So you guys are great. You have a call to order, roll call for additions or deletions, then you have public comment, then commissioners comment, and then you have the approval of the minutes, whether it's on the consent agenda item or not, whatever. But the public comment comes before the approval of the minutes. And you guys publish the draft minutes so that people like me can check and see, because I was there, and know what I said to make sure it was accurate. And I like that, and I compliment you for that. The Airport Advisory Board, on the other hand, has the call to order, the roll call, then the approval of the last minutes. And the catch of the day, so to speak, is that we're not allowed to see the draft minutes because I've been told, I've asked many times, because they're secret, because they're draft. And we can't let the public see the draft minutes. And I've suggested put draft over them and let us see them and let us be able to comment on them just the way I've commented here. But they've set it up so we can't do it. It's a catch-22. So because they have the call to order, roll call, they approve the minutes, then public comments.
Mm-hmm.
So my request as a citizen is that you ask the Airport Advisory Board to follow your model so that the public can see the draft minutes in advance, and then we have an opportunity to comment on them or not before the approval of the minutes. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're asking.
Yeah.
Mhm. And I see Rich is also listening. Yeah.
Just real quick, the issue is though, public comment is for items not on the day's agenda.
Right.
So,
but
and we don't have public comment right now for our minutes.
But the catch is, my request to be, I guess, correct would be, my public comment is to take the approval of the minutes off the consent agenda, so then there will be time for public comments on the.
Well, we'll just have to discuss it with staff
Yeah.
to see what the routine is, because
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense right now what you're saying, but we can find a way to make it make sense.
I understand what you're asking.
Yeah, my point is, as a
But-
member of the public, I was here, I made a comment, I don't think it was represented clearly, I'd like to get the minutes to reflect that. How do I do that?
That's what
Yeah,
we're gonna
Okay.
find out.
We will discuss that.
Okay,
and
for
figure
you
out.
and for the Airport Advisory Board.
Yes.
And the other, my very quick comment is, the curfew violation, it was over a month ago at the airport, and from everything I can tell, my last information was from the Airport Advisory Board last Thursday. I don't know what has happened. You guys had an executive session, I'm thinking maybe you were talking about it, but from the public standpoint, I reported this 5 weeks ago, a curfew violation, and I can get no information on what's happened, what hasn't happened, and I'm a concerned citizen, and I'd just like some follow-up.
Do you want to respond to that, Ryan, or you just want me to pass on what you told me?
I certainly can. Ms. Anderson,
It's
the
okay,
summons
Helen.
was supposed to be served today. Obviously, there are some extenuating circumstances that made that tough.
Great.
The summons will likely be served tomorrow, if nothing else
Wonderful.
major comes up.
And for my information, is it an airline person, or is it the pilot who served?
It'll be the SkyWest representative out
SkyWest
there.
representative. And are they summoned to a hearing or to county court?
It's a summons to county court.
Okay, and there will be obviously a date on the summons,
There will be a date on the summons.
and how can I find that out so I can appear in court
Once
as
the,
an observer?
sure, once the ticket is issued, I can let you know what that date is if you want.
Thank you.
No
I appreciate
problem.
it.
Yep.
Thank you very much, and thanks for rearranging them.
Okay, Ellen,
Thank you.
thank you,
Thank
nice to see
Be
you.
safe out there, Ellen.
Yeah,
Please.
really.
And then, do you want to promote somebody who's online for public comment? I don't see any hands raised. If you are online and you'd like to make a public comment, please raise your hand. What else should they do, Michaela? Yeah, I'll get to that. Okay, so I don't see any more public comments. And Greg?
Great, thank you. I would love our board to have a conversation at some point, or at least hear back from staff regarding Ellen's first suggestion that a synopsis of people's comments for the minutes would make a lot of sense to me. I think I see her point, and I certainly appreciate it, because sometimes we need that reminder when we're searching for a comment or something that was said. So a brief description in a few words of the nature of the comments, I think would be, hopefully wouldn't be too much to ask for the minutes. Thank you.
I do notice on the minutes, though, it usually says these are minutes for action items. I think that's the wording or something like that. But yeah, we will bring it up at a future meeting and discuss it. Thanks, Greg. Okay, I'm then going to close the public comments. And the next item is land use public hearings, so,
Can I ask a question?
yes.
Do we want to pass the minutes now, or do you want to wait till the end of the meeting?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, let's go ahead and pass the minutes now. That's a good idea.
I'll make a motion to pass the minutes for the regular meeting on February 8th, with the addition of some brief comments as to the public comment, the nature of the public comment items.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, it passes 5-0. We have
Want to make sure
approved the
we're
minutes.
cleaning up that.
So now I'm going to open public hearings on land use items, and the first one is a continuation of the Turnabout Ranch LLC PUD and plat amendments, activity envelope and site plan review, constrained and visually constrained site TDRs and special review, GMQS exemption, and it is going to be continued until March 8th. Is there anybody in the public who would like to speak to that? I don't see anybody. Anybody, any commissioners want to speak to that?
I will just make a motion to continue.
Okay. We have a motion to continue. Do I have a second?
There is a hand that went up.
Hand up,
I want to note.
Susan T. has her hand up. and
Okay.
Well, let's just get a
Cindy.
second on my motion and then,
I'll second the motion.
Okay, and then we'll listen to public comment.
I was just gonna ask the question, what is the location of the Turnabout Ranch?
It used to be the Ty Bar Ranch. It's on Prince Creek Road in the Crystal River Valley.
Okay, because
Several.
I know that there's a continuation for an STR that involves our community, and I wasn't sure if they had named it the Turnabout Ranch. I just wanted to clarify that.
Which is your community?
Susan
Woody
Redstone.
Creek,
Oh, okay.
I mean,
River
with-
Rock
Oh,
Lane.
Susan, that's Susan, okay.
That's Susan.
That's Susan.
That's Susan.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just I'll jump in.
Yeah.
The 100 River Rock Lane STR appeal was removed from the agenda. It was not ready to move forward because it wasn't duly noticed public hearing. We didn't have to continue it. So at this point, it has not been put back on an agenda, but that will happen. And we've been letting people know who were, in touch with us about it. But at this point, we don't have a date for that.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Okay, but their license is still denied?
They do not currently have a license.
Okay, that's a curious thing, but thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Okay, any further comment on the turnabout continuation? All right, I have a motion and a second, so all those in favor of continuing it until March 8th, please say aye.
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 That passes 4 to no. Kelly, are you there? Not there.
I'm here. I just
Okay,
don't
good.
feel very well, so I'm kind of keeping my camera off.
Okay, did you vote aye on that?
I did.
Thank you. Okay, so that passes 5 to zip, and now we're ready to move on to a resolution approving a minor amendment to a development permit for Elon Construction Incorporated, and Tammy is going to present to us, and we have somebody online.
All right.
And
Start with,
did you want, what is the name of the person from Grand Junction?
yeah, so we have
Mr.
Jim
Duty. Jim Duty.
Jim Duty online with us
Yeah,
representing
so if we
Elon.
could make him a panelist.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I just would like to share into the slideshow. So do I?
Click slideshow.
I
Not
did.
much snow going on right now.
Okay.
Minimize that.
Perfect.
and move it over
Okay, awesome, thanks. Okay, so this first item is a request for a minor amendment to development permit for Elam Construction Incorporated. Like I just mentioned, the representative that we have here today is Jim Duty. So it's a request to begin operating March 1st versus their April 1st date for the crushing operations, and this would just be for the 2023 season. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with the location of the Wagner sand and gravel pit shown on the screen. So just a quick background, Elam Construction has been operating at this pit since prior to 1970. I've tried to look up when they actually started operating, and I think it was sometime in the 50s, but for Pickens County records, we have records since the 70s when we restarted requiring permits, and they've obtained all the necessary permits since that time. They're currently operating under resolution number 52/2009, which granted an expansion to the pit, and also it granted them the ability to operate for 20 years from 2009. Within that resolution is the requirement that they do annual reviews with the BOCC. So every year, Jim does come and speaks to the operations, and the BOCC reviews their operations. Other permits that they have received since then are minor amendments, just like the request that they're asking for today, and that occurred in 2012, 2019, and 2022. And all three of those requests had either something to do with the nighttime operations for public projects, like you guys saw last year for the roundabout project, In 2019, we saw a very similar request for the crushing operations, that they extend the dates into December. So that was granted by the BOCC. However, they didn't actually utilize that time frame due to some mechanical issues. So that's a little background on that. So today, like I said, they're requesting that condition number 13 of that resolution be amended. As shown on the screen, it's their crushing operations are allowed April 1st through November 25th, and they're requesting a start date of March 1st for just this year. And as you'll see in that condition, it says that any extensions beyond those dates must be approved by the BOCC in consultation with the Woody Creek Caucus. So this was referred to the Woody Creek Caucus, the county engineer, the county attorney, and W/JHOA. The county engineer did provide comments. Those were in your packet. We didn't receive any other written comments. I did reach out to the Woody Creek Caucus and did get someone on the phone very briefly who stated they didn't support the application. They had a meeting.
And stated what?
That they didn't support the request. And they basically just said that they thought Elam should be operating within the time given. We requested that they put something more in writing and provide some more details on why they weren't supportive. We didn't receive anything. However, the applicant did attend that caucus meeting, and they believe that they were most concerned with crushing or noise and traffic. So I'll let Jim maybe speak a little bit more to what he thinks is their concerns. But, you know, as staff, given that condition, we were really hopeful that we would have more communication with the caucus and understanding if they had concerns and what those really were. But we didn't. So on the screen here is the criteria for a minor amendment to a permit. And as I stated before, in the packet, that most of this criteria is pretty straightforward, and staff believes that it is consistent, that the request is consistent with this criteria. Number one, is the request consistent with the actions taken during previous development approvals? Staff believes yes. They've come to all the required annual reviews. We didn't have any complaints last year about noise or traffic. And then number 5 does not increase off-site impacts in the surrounding neighborhood. So again, as far as staff is aware, we're not aware of any impacts that occurred this year. Like I said, the applicant thinks that maybe the caucus's concerns have to do with the noise and traffic. We didn't hear any complaints about that. Staff, so basically within that 2009 resolution, there's a requirement that the pit have annual or take monthly readings of the noise around the pit at various locations, and they can't exceed the 55 decibel limit. Last year they didn't, and as far as I've been doing these reviews, they've never exceeded that. Every once in a while there's a minor anomaly that has to do usually with the airport and airlines flying overhead. But as far as we know, they don't exceed that 55 decibel limit, and so staff doesn't believe that extending that crushing operations into March would further increase any kind of noise issue. The second issue that we're, I guess, thinking that the caucus might have had with this request is traffic. And staff would point out that by letting Elam operate in March, it doesn't directly affect traffic. Those trucks come and go however they, whenever they need material. It's not up to Elam and whether they're crushing or not. Over the life of the pit, it wouldn't also increase that traffic. So based on that, staff does support the applicant's request in granting this minor amendment. And that's all we have. And so I think I'll turn it over to Jim in case he wants to elaborate on the caucus meeting or anything else.
Okay. Are you out there, Jim?
Somewhere.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you. Hi.
Well, thanks for giving us the opportunity to have your staff present our request today. And really, we're just anticipating a busy season in Pitkin County. And our request is to build inventory. We're not looking to increase traffic. The noise isn't going to be any louder in the winter than it is in the summer. And we just think that you guys are going to have a busy year, and we need to build inventory to meet that. If we don't build inventory, then that truck traffic will get busier, but it'll be busier on the highway as they go down to Carbondale and come back 26 miles to deliver product to your community. So, just in a nutshell, that's what we're wanting to do. And in reality, the way winter is, it may hit so hard that we don't start March 1st.
So what you're saying is that you're applying to start March 1st, but given weather conditions, you may not do that?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Do we have any questions for Jim or for Tammy from board members?
Yes, Patty or Francie?
Okay, go ahead, Greg.
I was just contemplating, the noise monitors, and I appreciate that we would have noise monitors. It occurs to me that when there's snow cover on the ground, the noise propagating is probably much less. And I was just wondering if Jim has noticed that or would agree with it, that there's, a blanket of snow really suppresses noise, the transmission of vibration and noise. And I'm just thinking that I don't have a problem with this, because I think if anything, regular operations might be quieter when we're doing it when there's snow on the ground. Thanks.
Steve?
And I'm in agreement with that as well. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can. Thanks, Jim.
Okay. Yeah. And, being winter as well, I believe that the community at Woody Creek would probably have their doors and windows closed. And we'll be, winter doesn't really end until March 21st. And then we're another week off, and that would be April. And that's our normal starting time. So personally, we don't feel like we're going to have a big impact on Woody Creek.
Okay.
We're not going to bring in extra trucks. We're not doing that. It's the contractors who go out and bid a job. They're the ones that are going to come in and buy product. But we want to build the inventory.
All right, Steve?
Yeah, thank you. In the packet, it states that there was a greater demand in 2022 for your aggregate. Now, if this year is once again a big year for people wanting to buy aggregate, is this going to be a long-term problem, like every year is going to be greater demand than in previous years? And if so, I think you would maybe want to do a change in your operation with, I don't know, something different with the equipment, or I don't know your hours of operation, if those are limited, but maybe you need to look long-term for a way to produce more grinding operation during the April 1st through the 1st of December date. Could you address that idea, Jim?
Yeah, I was thinking about that as well, but there is a lot of different factors that go into crushing rock, and some of it's equipment and how it holds up.
One year we had that generator fire burned up, that put us behind. Then we had some trouble in the fall when we asked for that extension in December, and we could never, really get that equipment up and running. And we never did utilize that December time that you guys allowed us. So there's just so many variables into making product that has to be taken into consideration.
So are you anticipating that most years you won't need an extension, Jim, in the future?
Well, I guess it's dictated by the growth of the Aspen snowmass area. And
Okay, then you won't
would
need
know
any
more about
extensions
the
in the
growth
future.
than I would.
Yeah, well, you got a crystal ball?
Yeah.
I'd heard that you were going to expand the airport, so that's going to need aggregates. So there's a lot of planning going on, I'm sure.
Any other comments from commissioners?
No, thanks, Jim. It's always good to see you every year, and due to the fact you do come see us every year, I think we can be flexible in what your needs might be. But yeah, I appreciate the fact that your point being well taken about if they don't get it here, they're going to have to go somewhere, and we'd rather, for climate action issues and air quality and road traffic, we'd rather keep that transition shorter than longer. So, yeah, so I would be supportive of this, and as always in the future, we'll look to the Woody Creek Caucus for their comments and concerns.
Yes, I was at the Woody Creek Caucus meeting when you came, Jim, and I found your arguments quite compelling. And I pointed out to Bill, he came in and spoke about this a couple of weeks after that they didn't actually pass anything at that meeting about this. It was, it was your presentation, and then that was about it. But Bill did mention when he came in that he was concerned. But I did read the letter about traffic and how this isn't the traffic that would be generated is coming from the other people who are coming to get your product, not by your increased operation in March. So I don't see that as a potential problem, but I do think it would be something to think about whether your permit needs to be changed on a more permanent basis if this is going to be asked for every year. So, I'd like you guys to think about that a little bit and maybe talk about it before it comes up again. But I'm also going to support this. So any comments from the public on this? Susan, do you want to talk to us?
I do.
I figured that might be why you were here.
Well, no, I'm just here because, you never know what you might need to hear. But the Woody Creek Caucus did officially oppose this. There is concern about the noise. There is concern about traffic. And in the past, there has been concern about dust coming from the pit. And the Woody Creek Planning Board did discuss this, and the caucus does oppose this. So I'm not quite sure why no one seems to know this. I believe didn't Bill mention that when he, in the minutes where it says Bill was here at the last meeting, but there was no context to what he said. I believe that he did mention the Elam project at that last meeting. And I hear the county staff say that there were no complaints from the community. I'm not quite sure. I mean, I've heard plenty of complaints from residents, especially in the trailer park, which is just below the pit. And so I'm not sure if those complaints have made it all the way to the staff. If that's where they need to go when there are actual complaints from the residents, then I'll make that clear to them. If there's an outlet for that particular line of communication so that they can know specifically who they need to talk to make that clear. But the official position of the Woody Creek Caucus is that we do oppose this additional activity to the contract, the resolution, the existing resolution.
Thank you, Susan. Greg?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Susan, for that comment. I recall what I remember Bill saying when he came and presented at our meeting, which we hope will be reflected in the video and in the future on the minutes, was that the caucus decided that, I thought he said that I didn't hear that they said that they did not approve it, so I may have missed that. But what I thought I heard him say was that it was really up to this board to make the call, and as a point of order of some sort, which I confess I didn't quite understand. But I thought what I heard him say was, we decided that we should allow this board to make that call. And I could be wrong, but I just wanted to, that's what I remember. Thanks. So I guess that's all I have to add there.
Patty?
Yeah, Susan, there is a formal complaint process. That's the only way we know that there's been a formal complaint. And it's the only way staff can actually follow up. If there was a noise violation, what day was there, what time, because that's all reportable. So those things do need to come through in order to make it into the record, be it noise or traffic. The fact that we haven't had those complaints in the past is one thing, maybe because people didn't know where to file their complaints. But I think the greater issue for me is, as Greg was saying, the buffer of the snow right now, and the fact that if we can keep the product local, we're going to then make a bigger impact in a positive direction on our air quality and our noise and our traffic along Highway 82, which we know is a huge issue, and we have had many formal complaints. And it actually also addresses many things in our climate action plan. So that, at this point for this year, is kind of why I'm going to support this request from Elam. And then if we find that if in March there are issues, then hopefully people will report them in a manner in which we can put them in the record for consideration in the future.
Hang on one second. And just to clarify, Susan, it is in our packet that the Woody Creek Caucus is in opposition to this. And what I meant to say about the Woody Creek Caucus meeting, and maybe I wasn't clear, is that there wasn't a formal stand taken then, but then Bill told us when he came in that they had, at a future time apparently, taken an official stand. That's my understanding.
But we hadn't received anything in writing. That was just for a conversation with
That's
one
right.
member. So we need to have something not just coming from one member of the caucus, but something in writing from the caucus chair or secretary or whoever's that person that issues those.
Is there anybody else from the public who would like to comment on this? Ellen? You need to come up, please. And reintroduce yourself, please.
Yes, I'm Ellen Anderson, and I just want to read a text from Bill Dinsmore, because when I
Turn that mic on, please.
I'm sorry?
Your mic's not on.
Oh,
Press the little button.
I'm so sorry. Okay, am I okay now?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to read you.
The red light is on. She may just need to speak.
Could you move the other mic closer to you? It's not working.
Thank you for educating me.
Thank you, sorry.
Okay. I just wanted to read you Bill Dinsmore's words in a text to me in a preparation for my previous public comments when I said, Bill, in the best of all worlds, instead of just adding your name that you spoke at public comments, what would you like the comments to be reflected as? And these are his words, that this is what he would like those public comments at February 8th to be, which is probably too long for your minutes.
You said 5 words.
Yeah, I know, but may I read you? It's like one paragraph. He said, Bill Dinsmore said, in response to the request from the Wagner Elam pit to add an additional month of rock crushing activity at the pit, the Woody Creek Caucus does not support the request, but would support the operator requesting emergency operation hours to make up for any shortfall in gravel production, unquote. That's Bill's words.
Thank you.
And
any other comments from the public? Okay, Steve.
I would like to have, I mean, if this is approved during the month of March, I would really like to know how the sound carries and if there could be extra sound monitoring just to compare a season when there is more snow on the ground. Does that muffle the sound more? Also, there might be less dust in March than later in the summer when things are more humid and just more damp. So I would like, if we approve this, to have extra monitoring of the dust and the noise levels to compare it a winter time or late winter time crushing operation with later in the summer.
Do you mean you want that as part of the resolution?
Yes, to me, this would be partly an experiment to see how it goes. Also, if more people are indoors, which they're not going to have their doors wide open, they're probably not going to hear the crushing operation as much as they would later on. So I'm not sure how that could be determined, but I think this is an opportunity for us to see this as an experiment to see if, what is the impact of the crushing operation in March. It could be preferable to having crushing operations longer during the daytime during the summer and maybe going into evening hours when people are going to want to be out and about, and they probably would be more aware of the sound of the crushing operation in the summer than they would be during March.
They don't know I have a meeting right now.
So is that a possibility to add that to the resolution, that we'll have additional testing in March?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I believe they just do it once every month at, I want to say maybe 8 or so different locations, so we could have them do it twice in the month or 3 times, whatever
Okay.
you guys think is appropriate.
So we'll amend the resolution to include that. Okay, Greg?
Sorry, I'll take my hand down. I'm good.
Okay. Any further comments from the public? Susan, your hand is up. Is that a second time or is it left over? She's gone. Okay, any further commissioner comments?
I will make a motion to approve the resolution of the Board of County Commissioners granting a minor amendment to the development permit for Elam Construction with, even though I don't think it's necessary, but I don't have a problem with doing some additional testing. I would be interesting to see what the dust would be like on a day like today, and the noise, but if that makes the board more comfortable, and if we do see any issues, I don't think it's gonna be any different than any other month of their crushing periods. But, if we can move it forward on that, I'm willing to add that to the resolution, in my motion, to approve, which was lengthy.
I'll second
Okay.
the motion.
I'll just comment before we vote that I think it's a great idea to test a little bit more in March, because I could see that March might be a far better time to have operations going on than a dry September or October. So I like that idea, and so now I'm looking for people who want to approve this resolution to say aye.
Did I get a second? Oh, Steve seconded.
Yeah, we had a second.
And Kelly's got her hand up.
I seconded it.
Oh, Kelly, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to respond a little. I'm okay to test this out. I do wonder if we should be asking for referral comments from the Metro District, if they are serving at all as sort of a HOA kind of contact for the trailer park on these types of requests for the gravel pit.
Were they contacted about this?
I don't think they need to delay it. I just wonder if we should consider more direct communication with them on the gravel pit activities.
No, they weren't referred to, but we can definitely start.
Add them with the
adding
HOA.
them in.
Okay. Any more comments? So all those in favor of passing the resolution approving a minor amendment for Elam Construction's permit, please say aye.
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 Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Jim.
Finally.
Thank
Uh,
you, Commissioners.
The next resolution we are looking at is a resolution denying the Redstone Pastures LLC request for visually constrained and constrained site TDRs. And Tammy, are you presenting this as well?
I am, yeah. Let me share my screen here with you guys.
Francie, can you just let us know, are there quite a few people in the room for
Yes,
this?
there are 3 people from the Nislanik family here. Marge and Bill Fales are here, and Jocelyn is here as the attorney representing them, and Willie Fender is here. So there are 2 people from the Nislanik family.
I appreciate that, thank you. And I just want to let everybody know, I'm home with strep and feeling pretty under the weather, also with a sick toddler. So I'm fully present, but I am keeping my camera kind of on and off. Thank you.
Okay, Tammy?
All right, so this next item is for the Redstone Pastures LLC for an application for a constrained and visually constrained site TDR. They were represented here today by Jocelyn Wood. And the location of this parcel, as you can see on the map, is just north of the town of Redstone. Here's Redstone Boulevard, and it is bordered by Highway 133 to the east. Forest Service is to the north, and there's a private parcel just to the southwest. So, as I just stated, their request is for 2 TDRs, and they're asking that the BOCC make a determination as to whether the parcel is undevelopable or severely restricted or visually constrained. So just a quick background, this parcel was created in 1939 when Lucia McDonald, who was the widow of John Osgood, sold approximately 520 acres to some local ranchers for the purposes of grazing cattle. Since that time, that 520 acres has been sold off and conveyed, and now the successors of those ranchers now own approximately 68 acres, and it has continued through the years to be utilized by those owners for grazing of cattle, and they basically use this site as a staging area to move the cattle from in the spring up into Coal Basin, and then back through the parcel in the fall, and then they bring those cattle to their home ranches in the winter. So on the screen here is this area where it's mostly utilized for those ranching activities. You can see Highway 133 here to the east, and there's access taken directly off that highway. And then where my cursor is where those corrals and staging area occurs. The applicant does estimate that approximately 14 acres of this parcel are irrigated and have been since 1939. They do have 1 CFS of decreed water, which comes from Voorhees Creek. And with that, they irrigate this area shown or circled in red, and the cattle fertilize and harvest the grass in that area. All right, so on this parcel, improvements are present. Those include that access driveway, an unpaved parking area, a loading dock, some fenced pastures, corrals, some additional pens, and uninhabited mobile home and an RV, as well as the shed shown in the picture for storing tack and feed. This application was referred out to the referrals listed on the screen. In addition, we received several letters of support, and those were all included in your packet, and they're also listed on the screen. So the process for this is fairly simple. The BOCC shall make a determination whether the proposed preservation site is undevelopable or severely restricted. And if there is a determination that it's not developable, then the board shall determine that the principles of equitable mitigation merit the issuance of a TDR, or in this case, they're requesting 2 TDRs. So on screen is the criteria for that request. The parcel is located in the AR10 and RS30 zone district, which makes it eligible for this request. The applicant's position is that based on the development standards in Chapter 7, that this parcel is severely restricted to the point where 2 TDRs are equitable. They base that request on the fact that wildlife habitat, that there's irrigated land, and that this area is highly visible from Highway 133, and it is at the entrance of Redstone. And they believe that the Crystal River Master Plan supports the preservation of this parcel and its use for agricultural purposes. So I am going to jump to a GIS map and let's see here. Oops. Okay. So when staff reviews development applications, we usually first look to Chapter 7 of the Land Use Code, and in Section 71050, it lists what is considered a constraint, and this parcel does have quite a few of those listed constraints. So I'm just going to walk through those, hopefully relatively quickly with you guys. So on the screen here is the parcel highlighted in blue. One of the first constraints. Let's see here, sorry, I'll get my layers on here. We look at is a wildfire hazard. So as you can see in red, this parcel has severe wildfire hazard, and it also has an area with low wildfire hazard area, which is mostly in that pasture area that we had just looked at. So the code does permit development in both these areas with varying levels of mitigation that would be required if development were to occur. But when there's a place where there is low wildfire hazard, that's where development is required to occur. So development could occur in that green area on the screen. The next constraint that the site does have is part of it does encroach into the floodplain of Crystal River. So here we can see the floodway is in orange, and the 100-year floodplain is shown in pink. And again, there is a small area, or actually a large area, including that pasture area where the floodplain does not encroach. Okay, so another constraint on the site is the 100-foot setback from the Crystal River. So if we click on these layers here, again, similar to the floodplain hazards, it does encroach just to the very eastern side of the parcel. Voorhees Ditch also has a 100-foot setback. And again, there's an area here in this pasture area which is not covered by that constraint. Another constraint that we often look at is steep and potentially unstable slopes. This parcel has obviously all kinds of different slopes on it. The area, again, in green is ideal with slopes of 0 to 15%, and that's where the code would permit development to occur. So that's consistent with all the other constraint-free areas. Let's see here. What am I leaving out? And then, so the next one is irrigated lands for food and crop production. It's not one we often see, but in this case, as I mentioned, this 14 acres here, the applicant represents that it is irrigated and has been since 1939. And so staff agrees with the applicant and the Crystal River Master Plan that this area should be preserved. The code supports preservation of this agricultural area. However, it also does provide that if there's no other place on the parcel to develop that is not clear of constraints, that it could develop up to 5% to 15% of this irrigated area. So it does allow for flexibility to occur, and development could occur in this irrigated area. It's not ideal, but the code does allow for some flexibility there. And then the last constraint in Chapter 7 that I'll talk about is the wildlife habitat areas. So this area is within significant elk habitat. As you can see, it's all within the elk winter range, as well as it's within a quarter-mile of elk production area shown in green, as well as a quarter-mile of the elk severe winter range and elk winter concentration area. CPW was referred in this application, and they did provide comments. And they did agree that this parcel does serve. It provides great habitat for those elk, and I think they believe that there's a good chance that the elk calving habitat might encompass more area than is actually mapped. So staff agrees with them, and the code does prohibit development within a quarter-mile unless, again, there's no place on the parcel that would avoid it. So in this case, it's unavoidable, and in that case, the code does provide for mitigation, which includes things like reduced time for construction. In this case, the code would allow basically 6.5 months of construction, and the rest of the time development would be limited. Additionally, there's also conditions as to how to kennel your dogs and that they need to be on leash and things like that. This isn't the only parcel in the county that is located close to these habitat areas, so that we have allowed development in places like the east of Owl Creek subdivision. Just to the south of this parcel is another parcel that was developed that's totally within these habitat areas. There's also parcels at the end of Capitol Creek and Bear Ridge Road that have been developed with these mitigation standards. There's other common development challenges that we see, and those often have to do with access, legal access or emergency access, water availability, or septic design challenges or road setbacks. And at this point, staff doesn't believe that there's any issue with those that I just listed. Those wouldn't. There is that highway, 100-foot highway setback, and we don't believe that would significantly hinder development on this parcel. Okay, so the next constraint that I'll talk about is the visual constraint. Let me see if I can get here. So pursuant to 6720, legally created lots and parcels may be identified as visually constrained sites where development would severely impact or destroy a public view plane as determined by the Board of County Commissioners. This parcel is within the Highway 133 Scenic View Protection Corridor, and I did include a series of photos in your packet that were taken along Highway 133. And there are some areas that have significant amount of mature vegetation which would screen the site, especially that pasture area where development could occur. But there are some areas that are more open that would likely be visible from the highway. So pursuant to our scenic protection standards, you're supposed to locate development where you could least see it, and not locate it on the highest point of a site or on a ridge where it would project above a ridge. So staff believes that, again, the pasture area could be developed and it likely would be seen from the highway. However, that same scenic view protection chapter does provide for mitigation, and some of those mitigation tools include building in indigenous earth tone colors or using non-reflective material, siding structures behind the existing vegetation or screening with new vegetation. There's also tools such as breaking up the mass of the buildings into smaller forms so it's not one continuous plane. Other things include staggering roof lines and clustering so it's not all sprawled out. So based on those tools, staff doesn't believe that this is significantly constrained visually and therefore doesn't support the request for a constrained site TDR. So I guess in summary, staff agrees that there's no location on the site that isn't clear of these constraints, but the code does provide for this flexibility and provides for tools to mitigate those constraints. So, you know, those mitigation standards do restrict the property. Staff agrees that it is more restricted than other properties that occur in the county, but doesn't see it as a severely restricted site, and therefore recommends that the BOCC adopt a resolution denying the Redstone Pastures LLC request for a constrained and visually constrained site TDR.
Thank you, Tammy. And are we going to hear from you now, Jocelyn?
Sure.
Thank you, Tammy. That was brilliant. I don't have to cover all of that. As you know, I am Jocelyn Wood. I represent Redstone Pasture LLC, which is a group of numerous families, some of whom continue to ranch to this day, and some of whom have long been out of the ranching business. Therein lies the issue for why we are seeking constraint TDRs on this parcel. The non-ranching families are interested in moving on and outnumber the ranching families, and they are hoping to be able to monetize their ownership interest in this property without necessarily having the property developed. And in my understanding, the Pickens County Board of Commissioners supports conserving land and finding that agricultural uses and conservation are beneficial. So I also know that there are issues and that the TDR program is not something that's completely favored by all commissioners, but it is what we have, and it is currently part of the code, and these particular provisions that Tammy cited do in fact allow for TDRs to be issued if this property is found to be constrained. I appreciate that Tammy pointed out all the different constraints that impact the property, including the elk calving area. I'd like to point out that the letter in your packet from CPW basically said there could conceivably be elk calving all over the area of this property, and that if that's the case, the board would not have the opportunity to grant a development right for this property. They would be restricted and say, no, if CPW came in at that point in time, were we to be seeking development of the property, CPW could very well say it's not developable. As of this point in time, they haven't, dived into that analysis because that's not what we're seeking. And so with that in mind, I'd like to just talk about the Crystal River Master Plan, which was enacted in 2016. I think a number of people in this room signed it, and so I will remind everyone that the Crystal River Valley planning area includes the Redstone pasture, and there's a large chunk of Pitkin County in that area, including this property. And their overarching goal of the master plan is to maintain the lands in a manner that protects the natural environment and the rural and agricultural character of the valley. The second overarching goal is the protection of wildlife and wildlife habitat, which CPW acknowledges and agrees, and the mapping confirms that this property is located within that area. Easements to protect the landscape, I agree. There are probably ways to mitigate being able to see the development of a couple 5750s on this property. And that's probably an issue that would have to be done at that point in time. That's not what we're asking for, though. The Crystal River Master Plan clearly states that they would like to promote agricultural lands over ex-urban development, and our applicant is seeking the promotion of agricultural land uses. They would like to continue using this property as it's been used since 1939, and that is to marshal the cows together, let them graze a little bit, and then drive them on horseback up to Coal Basin, where they have grazing permits that are tied to this, and then the home ranches that are all in the Pitkin, Garfield, Carbondale area. Those ranches include the Neeslandic ranches and Cold Mountain Ranch and a couple other smaller ranches. The Crystal River Master Plan also encourages this is sustainably sourced local food supply, and this is clearly a sustainably sourced local food supply. The Neeslandic ranches and Neeslandic beef provides food for many individuals who purchase beef from them directly, as well as they sell to the ski company, the Brass Anvil, a number of different restaurants. I think I put all that in my supplemental application. In addition, the Coal Mountain Ranch, that's the Fales Ranch, they a lot of their beef ends up in Whole Foods through Country Naturals. So this is a sustainably sourced and local food supply, and it is a way of life that I believe is quickly disappearing in our valley, and I'm hoping that you see that if you lay one constraint on top of the other, you ultimately come down to the fact that this property is completely constrained. I think we came up with about, even just using the agricultural and irrigated land issue and food production, we came up with, out of nearly 70 acres, 0.7 developable acres, and then most of that is within a quarter mile of severe winter range. So that would make it undevelopable unless you enacted certain standards and mitigation processes. But we're not asking you to do that. We're asking you to help us conserve this land and to come up with a process that allows our local ranching families to continue to ranch, to continue to provide a local food supply, and to promote agriculture. I also would like to point out, most importantly, is that the Crystal River Master Plan, one of their goals is for the use of TDRs and other county rules to maintain the rural character of the valley. So that is specifically in the Crystal River Master Plan, and they suggest the use of TDRs when faced with conservation. So we would ask that the board issue the TDRs or agree to issue the TDRs in exchange for a conservation easement on this property. And that's about all I have.
And it's my understanding that, Bill, you would like to present as well?
I would. Thank you, Francie.
Will you introduce yourself, please, for the public?
What was that?
Just introduce yourself for the people who are watching online.
Okay. Well, hi, I'm Phil Fales. Marge and I and our daughters own Cold Mountain Ranch that most of you are well familiar with, having protected it in 2009 with a conservation easement over every single acre that we own. So thank you for making time today, and thanks staff. We had a great site visit out there for staff for a site visit about a month ago. But as much as I appreciate their coming out and doing the time, here to ask you to overturn their recommendation. We really feel that our agricultural operations are at risk. The original owners, who pretty much were all Austin immigrants, like so much of this valley's original agriculturists were, they were determined to keep this land in agricultural production. And their efforts to keep it in agriculture have succeeded for 84 years. I feel today it's our responsibility to secure the future of this land for the next 84 years. This pasture in itself is really important in wildlife benefits, in scenic view sheds for the scenic Highway 133, for wildlife habitat, for all kinds of things. But what happens to this pasture also directly affects the viability of 4 other ranchers. And as Jocelyn said, you know, currently there are 13 families that own this land. A little over 68% of the ownership is owned by people who no longer ranch. And so Tim and Paul and Marty and Matt and I feel pretty uneasy about our future, where we are. We feel it's a really constrained site, and the staff has, told you how we could possibly mitigate if there was some future development. I'm a little puzzled by that. Certainly in our Cold Mountain Ranch conservation easement that we did in 2009, it specifically prohibits planting trees alongside of 133 because they wanted to see our fields. I mean, I'm flattered, but it's confusing when one place we're told you can't plant trees and one place we're told you can. But what I think is more important is that we're not looking to mitigate development. Preventing development is what we've been working on for so long and for so hard. And so we're asking for some help to protect this important property, which additionally protects all these other ranches. It's so critical to us. And the one thing that I think there may be some confusion about is there's been lots of talk that we use it in June to stage going up onto the permit, and then again in October coming back down. But in reality, we use it all summer long. The permit starts June 26th and comes off October 10th. But we're there all summer using this pasture. We have a rider hired to ride after the cattle most days of all summer long. He pastures his horses there. We go in there to assist the rider and come in. I mean, there are a lot of days where we're pulling in there with a dozen pickups and trailers and riding on the permit from there, as well as sometimes bringing down sick stuff or things that have come back on their own for no particular reason, but need to catch them before they hit the highway. Looking at all these overlays, they're good, but what bothers me as a rancher is it's not really an overlay of agriculture. And to me, I can't understand in my limited ability how, if it was developed, how we could continue agriculture. I see those as two conflicting things. The past, obviously we can't use the cliff. The majority of the property is pretty steep cliffs. We couldn't get the staff up to the upper corners on the site visit. Tim and I had hiked up there and put some flagging up on we didn't actually even get to the far corner, did we? But we got pretty far up to it and we got on the line. So the only part, as Tammy correctly said, that a house could potentially be built, which we are not asking for, is right in the middle of the part we need most for our agricultural operations. So that's about it. But I just think that we've been working on this to protect this for so long. We have, well, remember, and we have minutes and letters that Willie's mother, Pat Fender, wrote to Open Space and Trails, I always say OST, in 1999, trying to work on it then. One of the other owners, Mick Seberg, and I, 3 years ago, we spent $15,000 in legal fees between us to come up with a plan that we got all the owners to agree to, and we thought would work. And then we met with Dale and Kevin Chandler, the appraiser. And unfortunately, one of the problems with my brilliant idea was that we were going to retain use as long as we had cattle on the permit. And after that, it could go to the county. And Kevin Chandler said, well, I can't appraise something that has an indeterminate length of restrictions on the county. If you say it's 10 years, I could work some numbers. If you say it's, whatever length of time, but an indeterminate length of time, he couldn't appraise. So he suggested we go this TDR route. And I just think the need to find a solution is getting more pressing every day, We were all at Paul's brother's John funeral yesterday. None of us are getting any younger. We really do need to find the solution for this, and so that's what I hope we can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Jocelyn.
And we have the first and the second generation ranchers here from the Neath-Lanik family. We don't have the third generation because it's calving season, and they're calving 24 hours, I think, a day. But oh, you're third? Okay, well, okay. I'm sorry.
We got 1/3 here.
So
1/3.
He's fourth.
Okay, so I don't have the fourth generation here, but I wanted to play, if it's okay, it's just under 3 minutes, a short video of the fourth generation, and their
Hopefully it'll play. Sometimes our
I
technology.
did want to say to you, Paul, that you asked, you were a teacher. I was Johnny's teacher.
That's right. Johnny and Parker are brothers.
Yeah.
Right, and Johnny's
Yeah.
in this video, I think. So hopefully you'll be able to hear it and see it.
We don't
Can I
always have
share?
a lot of luck.
You'll have to go back to your Zoom to share. Here, I'll let you.
It needs to, yeah.
Click your Zoom application, then
That.
and then yep, click it one more time so you can see it.
Mm-hmm.
Steve, while we're waiting for this,
There.
is the weather so bad that
Yeah.
you need a tent to crawl into?
He's sleeping in the garage.
Bill, I'm in Fairbanks, and I'm in the garage, and it's chilly.
Grandchildren are pretty fun, aren't they?
We keep teasing him about the fact they make him sleep in the garage in a tent.
Full screen view. And
Okay. Ah, voila.
Nice garage with a bookcase.
Okay.
Not sure.
You see that? Okay.
Let's see if we
We'll see if we get sound.
That's always good job.
We just get a little feedback if we
Johnny.
hear it.
Okay, so we'll have to be quiet. It's okay. You'll get the point.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start it. So this is fourth generation.
Oh, help. It doesn't always work.
all the volume we can get?
We don't always get volume, or we don't get picture.
Growing up, we've been taught by Dad and Grandpa that
Probably gonna start.
land is your most important aspect, that and water. And without the land, we couldn't have the cattle, so without the ranching end of it, we couldn't be cowboys. I have a lot of memories with Grandpa riding, packing salt, soakers, Thompson Creek, redstone everywhere. I was probably 7, maybe 8. We were going up the trail through the timber, and there was a big down log, and there's no way around it other than going over it. Grandpa sat on the other side, persuading me just to jump, and I sat there and fought with myself to do it or not to do it, but I knew in the end I had to go. I finally went and jumped, and everything was fine, just like Grandpa said it was going to be, but that was the day I built a lot of trust in myself on a horse because of Grandpa. Dad and Grandpa instilled in us to be proud of what you do, do it with the best ability you can, and raise our families that way. For our generation to stay in the cattle business or just the ranching business in general, it's going to be a challenge. It's hard for the little guy to survive anymore, so there's very few of us left. Grandpa and Dad have made us very proud young men. We respect them deeply, and we want to carry on that legacy for ourselves and for them. Growing up on a horse, your rite of passage is when somebody doesn't have to pick you back up and dust you off, you just get up and dust yourself off. Keep going.
Thank you.
I have a
Thank
few
you, that was fun.
Yeah, I have a few generations, but we don't do cows.
You've got sound system.
I don't know why, I have nothing on, so.
I don't either. I think it stopped.
It stopped, it was her.
Okay.
So do you have any questions for either
Exactly.
the ranchers or for me, you know, as someone who can maybe help with the land use code and your ability to.
Could you push the button on your mic?
Yeah, so any questions from the commissioners for Jocelyn or Bill?
Francie?
Yeah,
Greg here.
I see your hand now. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. Jocelyn and Bill, thank you for being there. I'm sorry I am not there with you today. And I do appreciate you made the hazardous trip all the way up for the meeting. I do have some questions, but I want to preface them by saying everything you're trying to do to protect this land is noble and good, and it certainly fits within my values, and I believe the values of the county. Protection of ag, protection of open space, all those things check the boxes as you did. But I have to ask you, have you considered other options for conserving this property through a conservation easement and sale? And that'd be my first question, and I have others. What other tools are there available to you?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, Greg. Looks like the weather's better where you are. But, yeah, I mean, that's what I tried to say. You know, since the late 90s, we've been talking on and off with open space. And in fact, got so far is 2018 Mike Nash and Randy Johnson did an appraisal, but it was kind of a joke, the appraisal. It ignored a lot of good comparables. It stated that the 70 acres right south of our property, what was part of the original parcel that was bought from Osgood's widow, it's the 70 acres that the Schumachers had that the county bought for them had a mile of Crystal River frontage, and I didn't know the river was quite so serpentine in that section. To get a mile on 70 acres is a difficult thing, as well as their properties on the west side of 133, not on the east side. It's also talked about one of their comparables is on the border of Pitkin and Mineral County, and I'm not sure which one of you expanded your boundaries, but it's tough. It talked about a public parking lot and public access, but didn't include a single dollar of value for either one of those. So that kind of quit. That stopped that discussion, really. We've had lots of stumbling blocks on this. We had one owner who owned 2% because all of us owned undivided interests in this property. And we had one owner who owned 2% and was trying to hold it up when we tried to consolidate the ownership so that we could deal with the county, because I think it'd be pretty hard to keep Rye busy to have 13 different owners coming in on each undivided interest trying to make a deal. And so we've consolidated our ownership so that we could, but we had one owner who just with his 2% thought he could veto everything, and Marge and I were able to buy them out, the trustee of the estate, and so that now we have unanimous support among our owners. But we have looked at a lot of different things, Greg, trying to seek protection for this.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. So it sounds like what we need is a new appraisal. Personally, that's what I would go for. If there's a real problem with the appraisal, that needs to be re-examined, and I would encourage you to do that. I certainly would support the county having a conservation easement on this land. And I think when I always feel really as if perhaps comments about objections to TDRs are addressed to me, and if I have a minute, I can explain why. 2 TDRs on this property represent about $1 million to or somewhere between $2 and $4 million value. I'm going to assume that is probably 400% of what the appraised value would be today of an outright purchase of the land, and maybe 10 times what the conservation easement purchase would have been on an appraisal. And so what I think a situation like this does is it creates an incredible amount of inflation, which is going to affect the market dramatically in our valley. Who isn't going to come and say they want a TDR instead of the fair appraised value for their property if they can get 4 to 10 times as much for it? In addition, when we get a conservation easement, we often get access rights and public benefits out of that, and it just doesn't remain in the interests of the single interests of the owners. So these are my concerns. It's not about this, because I support everything the ag people are doing, the ranchers are doing, but I'm also trying to understand what this will do to our land values and the ability to secure conservation easements in the future. So that's my big concern, and I really want to suggest that if this appraisal it was inappropriate or not done right, it'd be revisited and done again in today's dollars, perhaps with a new appraiser if you didn't like Mike Nash. But we do know Mike Nash is the is kind of the state of the art around here for ranch appraisal. So I understand that, maybe there's another way to approach that. Thanks. That's my comment based on the question, but I'm hoping we can do this, and I'm super hesitant about TDRs. Thanks.
Thanks, Greg. I'd like to recommend that we ask questions now, and then we listen to the public, and then we do comments, if that's okay with the rest of the
Yes,
commissioners.
thank you. I apologize.
No worries. Steve, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do have a question. Well, one question for Tammy and one for Bill and Jocelyn. I'll address Bill and Jocelyn first. If you do get, say you did get 1 or 2 TDRs, what is the mechanism you have for using that money to buy out those who are no longer ranching and want to sell their interest?
Yeah.
Do you have, I think it depends on your structure, if you had a partnership or some kind of corporate structure that would require, if you sold a TDR, that the money be split up amongst all of you, then that would, and not just have that money given to those who want to cash out on the land. So do you have a structure to actually make the transaction, provided you can get money to do so?
Yeah, Jocelyn's ready to answer that.
Yep. Thank you, Steve. We do. And that was a process that took just as long as the application process, and that was the negotiation with the 13 families. And we created an LLC in Colorado, and we have a very clear and specific operating agreement that provides for how any cash infusion if it comes in, how it goes out, and it's on a percentage basis based on the percentage ownership in the LLC that each family has. And I will say that I have another client that has 3 TDRs in my safe at my office, and they're unable to sell them at this time. The market is not what it once was, and I just thought I'd point that out. So that is the fair market value of the TDRs might not be quite as significantly high as it once was, maybe 9 or 10 months ago. Did
Bill?
that answer your question?
Bill would like to answer. Is that okay, Steve?
Steve,
Sure.
great question, because we're not, if we did nothing to consolidate the ownership into the ag community, we wouldn't have gotten much, which is, I think, the point you're getting to. And so among the 13 families, we came up, and I think Jocelyn even drew up some of the paperwork to do that, where if we can recoup enough money to distribute to all the members, because I don't know any other way to do that in a LLC, except equally. If we can do that, there was a set dollar amount in that agreement, then the vast majority of members have agreed to sell back the carcass value, to the remaining cattle people. And Marge and I have stepped up and said that we will use the money we get from a sale of TDR, if we could get one, and I know, Greg, you have some concerns, but that we would purchase them out. And we've already agreed in writing to purchase them out, and they have agreed to sell if we can get over the first hurdle.
Thanks, Bill. Did you have another question, Steve?
Yeah, second question would be how, in terms of the property, how many houses could be built on it given the current county zoning? I kind of need that as a baseline. Would it be 2 houses that could be built given the zoning on the land?
Given the zoning, it's RS30 and AR10, and the AR10 is quite small, so it's the most restrictive zoning that applies, and so it would be 2 based on 30 acres, and it would the houses would have to be very close together. given the location. I mean, even if it were even possible, if we could even get that kind of development right. But 2, yes, thank you.
Yeah, and is that why that figure 2, is that how you came up with the 2 TDR request?
Yes.
Tammy, did you want to speak to that?
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions for now.
Yeah, well, do you want to? I can. So, as far as we know, the parcel contains 68 acres, and as Jocelyn said, it's RS 30 and AR 10. So they would need to subdivide to get 2, and they would need 60, potentially 60 acres to do that. But they would have to go through that subdivision process, get approved. But as it stands, they would only have one development right for one house and potentially a CDU.
And compete in growth management for a second development right.
Mm-hmm.
And a place to put it.
Other questions from commissioners before I ask the public?
I'm good. I'd like to hear what the public has to say.
Okay, so are other people from the public who would like to speak to this? Anybody in the room? Are we going to hear from any of you gentlemen or Marge? Willie.
Willie Thunder.
Come on up to a mic, please.
Okay. Anyway, third generation, my grandchildren are sixth generation, and what we've come up with is, I think, is a tremendous plan, working with Picken County on their TDR program, which was started in 1994 by a great group of people of how to save agriculture in the Roaring Fork Valley. That was 30 years ago and 2 or 3 ranches ago. Well, I think our idea to do the TDRs allows the non-ranchers to get their money, the ranchers that are very important to the Mid-Valley, and as we have found out, produce food for the valley. I think it's a win-win situation, and this is the first time in 60 years I've ever heard the county wanting development and not preservation. Thank you.
Anybody else? Is there anybody online who would like to make public comment? Doesn't look like it. All right.
Francie?
So, yes.
I kind of hate to kick a sleeping dog, but Greg did for me. The public access. You know, I've worked really hard for protecting Thompson Divide, and one of the things I said when I was in Congress testifying is that I really like running cows and grazing them, but I recognize it's not appropriate anywhere or everywhere, and tried to make the point that developing the oil and gas wasn't appropriate on Thompson Divide. And I'd say that it's not appropriate to run cows everywhere. It's not appropriate to develop oil a lot of places. It's also not appropriate for public access everywhere. I think you really need to read carefully John Groves and Matt Yamashita's letter to you about the wildlife benefits, as well as it's just really hard. You can ask, I fortunately don't have to run cows on the Crown, but talk to these guys who run cows on the Crown about how the public usage up there impacts grazing animals up there. It's pretty tough. And the Redstone pasture is also, I mean, it's an active working area where we haul our cows in. Norm, our rider, keeps his horses all there all summer. It's pretty tough to have access where you have gates that have to go through that left open, let the horses out onto 133, and either the horses get killed or, God forbid, a human gets hurt running into them, because that happens. We have our tack shed there that the staff all went through on the site visit, where we keep, expensive tack and medicine and other supplies. It's vulnerable to vandalism and theft. But, I think our families, the Neeslandics and stuff, support public access in a lot of locations. And I don't want to overlook what they've done in the Jerome Park conservation easement and allowing Spring Gulch to operate there. And if you think that's not a public amenity, go up there any weekend, especially when the parking lot is overflowing and people are parking on the road. We are currently, as a North Thompson cattleman, working with the Spring Gulch Nordic area, or Mount Sopers? Nordic Council, thank you, to allow them to expand trails, which they've done mostly, what they hadn't planned, and to create a second parking lot, partly just because they're at capacity now, and partly because climate change is maybe pushing the skiing a little higher up in elevation. And people don't like to ski on mud. I don't know why not. They should, but they don't. But so we've donated that area for that incredible public usage there, as well as a snowmobile, giving them access at Marion Gulch, giving them a parking lot, allow Ski Sunlight to use part of our land, all the good skiing, the steep stuff on the east side of Sunlight is on Cattleman's land. The Eastlandics have donated the land for St. Mary's, where the church where John's funeral was yesterday. Cold Mountain Ranch, prior to our easement, we donated land for river access and land for the bike path so they didn't have to do so many retaining walls. We like public access. Just in this location, it doesn't work. In Marion, we have public access, but it's problematic. I know one of your letters is from John Armstrong. His wife, Teresa, was basically attacked by a cow last summer and stomped on, broke her arm and stomped on her abdomen. I blame the cow partly, but one of the reasons the cow was like that is that she'd been harassed all summer long by off-leash dogs. And I think we'd just be setting ourselves up for future incidents like that. I've talked to open space staff trying to get some more enforcement up there to ticket off-leash dogs. And Paul told me it's too far away, but that's a separate issue. But we have a lot of problems. And unfortunately, the public isn't as responsible as they want to do. We have problems at Spring Gulch. We donate that for the Nordic area, and we say, use it all winter, but in the summertime, we use it for our cows. You're not welcome in the summer. People trespass on us all summer long. We have terrible trash dumping problems. Even now, when there is good skiing there, we have people ignoring all the signs and walking, and when it's warm like today, put big post holes in the Nordic tracks, which again bugs the skiers. So it's not appropriate in all places, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Comments?
Any other members of the public? Was that?
We did the
close
public.
it?
Yeah, we didn't have any. So any other commissioners have comments that they'd like to make now?
I'm going to wait to hear from the rest of the board.
Steve?
Being in the cattle business myself for most of my life, I have admired these corrals and the loading dock that you have there on this property for, the whole time we've lived here. I realize the huge value that is to all of you to get your cattle right off of 133, get them unloaded, and then trail them into the high country. That's what makes it possible for you to graze at all in Coal Basin. And I want to somehow ensure that this is preserved. I don't want houses built on it. I was asking the question to figure out, realizing that a house could be built there, not but I don't want to have that be the end result of this. The end result I would like is for somehow this effort to be successful, where the remaining cattle families can own the property, and those who don't have cattle anymore can sell their interest in it. I'm not certain that a TDR program is the best way to accomplish this. My thought is that a conservation easement with the ranch families retaining ownership of the land could be the best mechanism to accomplish this. And in order to do that, we would need to have a good appraisal like Greg was talking about. We'd have to have the Open Space and Trails Board, or perhaps some other, it's not necessarily Picken County Open Space and Trails, although that is probably the best source of funding for purchasing a conservation easement. But it could be through some other organization also. And I think that could be the best mechanism for raising the money for this transfer. I've gone through sort of a similar process with my family, where I was the one who wanted to keep ranching and the others just wanted to get money. They didn't want to keep the land. So I totally understand the situation you're in, having gone through that myself. Knowing the sentiment of this board about issuing more TDRs, I'm not certain. I'm pretty sure that they would not agree to 2 TDRs for this. They might agree to 1 TDR, but then 1 TDR, I don't know if that accomplishes raising the money that you are looking for to buy out those who want to get out. So let's see. I might have more comments. I want to hear what other people have to say right now.
Kelly, did you want to speak to this?
Yeah, I'd like to hear from everybody else as well. I think, I've been a supporter of the TDR program. I do think it does a lot of good. I also think it has some negative implications, and that's why a thoughtful approach to how we issue them is really required. And so when I think about kind of this overall project on balance with all of the county interests, we have issued TDRs in constrained sites in the past and in the Crystal Valley, for sure. However, the difference for me on this has been an interest by the Open Space and Trails team in this property. The Open Space and Trails group sometimes hates it when we send them, inquiries about whether they would buy something rather than have us issue a TDR. But given the history of interest in this property, I kind of want to maybe reignite those conversations and see if there is an avenue to closing this protection interest that we all share. And I'll just say that I definitely share interest in protecting this property. But having it go through Open Space and Trails means that we would not generate kind of the negative consequence of landing a TDR or 2 TDRs somewhere else. So because there's been demonstrated effort on that in the past, I'm not kind of prepared to decide on the TDR application until we maybe revisit that and see if there's a revived negotiation that can be successful.
Thanks, Kelly. Patty.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Steve and Greg. I can pretty much say, knowing the discussions we've had recently about TDRs on this board, I don't see 2 TDRs flying. and I don't want to deny this, because I think this is a property that needs to be protected and continue to be used for agricultural purposes. I also am a firm believer in public access. I know there's issues, but we have to, for me, there's a public benefit when the public dollars are used. Not to say we're just gonna let them run ramshot through the property, but maybe there's an opportunity we have missed and something we need to look at. I agree the appraisal needs to be updated, it needs to be vetted. I would be comfortable with one TDR, but I think the board is looking at the other opportunities with maybe looking at a conservation easement based on a valid appraisal that we can all agree on, hopefully. And then possibly, that would mean remanding it back to Open Space and Trails for them to revisit. Again, I do not want to see this property developed. And I'm afraid that if we were to move forward on the 2 TDRs today, you would get nowhere, and I don't want to see that either. So my position would be to get the appraisal, have that worked out for the appraisal to be updated and thoroughly vetted, and then go back to Open Space and Trails or other avenues for a conservation easement. And at that time, maybe looking at the opportunity for a clean public access that would not be threatening to the well, don't shake your head, because then you don't want to know today. So I think we need to look at all those opportunities, because public access to public lands is extremely important to me, especially when we're using public dollars. And I hear that from my constituency all the time. And those are the people who voted to keep me in office for the length of time. And so I think that's important. So I'm just going to say that.
I'm going to speak now. Obviously, I want this property conserved a lot. It means a lot to me personally, and for all of you, and for the county. I believe in TDRs. They've had their place. I'm not sure they have a huge place in the future. But I don't want my strong feelings about TDRs to interfere with the preservation of this particular piece of property. I do think that since 2018, I think we can all agree that real estate in this valley has probably doubled in value. I know my property has, much to my shock. So I do think that if we were to have another appraisal done, that it would come out quite different than the last one did. I understand, I think conservation values are like 60% of sales values, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, there is the possibility of the county buying it, but I think better and more in your interest would be a conservation easement that had more monetary value than what you saw in 2018. I have spoken with Open Space and Trails, and they concur that it would be significantly more valuable now, without going into specific numbers. I mean, I don't know where the appraisal would come out. And the other thing about the TDRs right now is that, you know, it's kind of a gamble for you, because the market is not stable anymore, and a conservation easement might afford you more security and certainty than TDRs would. I think this is an incredibly valuable piece of property, personally. I think that ever having a house built that close to 133 right there at Redstone with Pitkin County property across the street is insane, and I would hate to see it. I feel that way about a lot of property in the Crystal River Valley. But so I would probably recommend, after we hear from Steve, that we continue this with and encourage Open Space or you guys to get an appraisal, and that we, instead of denying this application, I would like to see it, if you think that's a alteration that would be possible, Suzanne, for instance, to change the application so that we're not saying no to you guys, but that we're giving you a chance to bring it forward to us in a way that makes it that we can say yes to.
We can continue it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We can continue it and have it come back in a different form.
Can I real quick, I know Steve had his hand up. I just want to clarify, I'm just asking that public access be looked at. I'm not mandating that it occur, just to see if there is an opportunity. We don't have public, I just wanted to clarify that.
I don't agree with Patty on that, sorry.
Well, that's okay, I just,
I think that we have plenty of places to go in this county, and places where cattle are is not a reasonable place to expect people to go. You know, I have a friend who it was never afraid of cattle, and we were walking through the field last year during calving, and we were being charged by a cow, and she'd never seen that before. And she had been in dangerous situations all the time, walking between calves and moms and all kinds of stuff. Finally, she understood what I was talking about. So I would not promote public access to this, public access to any land where there's cattle.
I'm just asking that
And
it be
we
looked
have
at to see if there's an
so
option.
many trails.
And we have so many people using trails, it never hurts to have more. I'm
true.
just asking that it be
I
looked at
actually
as an
can't
option.
call on you under the format, Willie. I'm so sorry, but
Sorry,
if you
sorry, I
want to
just
tell
wanted
Bill.
But they've already been passing notes to Bill, so.
So Bill, what would you like to say?
Patty, public
Yes, Bill.
access is definitely a public benefit. And I've tried to show how these families have granted a lot of public access, you know, allowed Spring Gulch, allowed Marion, or allowed so many things. But conservation in and of itself is also a public benefit. And I know from our cattlemen owners, there are some people who flat will not go along with this if public access, which kind of seems to be the flavor of the day with open space and trails, is part of it.
I'm not speaking for
Yeah,
open space
yeah,
or
but-
trails.
but
I'm speaking
I
for
have.
me and the people I represent.
And furthermore, there's no part of the forest that we block access to the public land. You can get to up above this property lots of different ways. We ride horses to it, coming up other valleys and coming back down to this property. We're not landlocking public ground. Redstone is an enviable location where you can walk any direction from Redstone and be on public land. You can go everywhere from Redstone, and you can get to the public land above our property lots of other ways. I mean, but is just, I mean, talk to John's wife Teresa about that cow.
We heard all about the wild bad cow.
Yeah,
We heard all
and-
about
and-
it. So, but I just really
It's-
quick.
Yeah, we don't need to resolve
Yeah,
that issue
no,
today.
we don't,
no,
we
no, no,
don't.
but let me just-
It's just, it's a no-go with the cattlemen. And I'm
Well-
sorry to put it in black and white, but it really is.
Okay, well,
And as an appraisal, as cattlemen, we've already assessed ourselves over $40,000 to get this far with you and to consolidate our ownership. And that's been a hardship for some of our members.
Well, my question about public access, if all you're saying, and I agree that you've done a lot for the community, so if it's going to be a no-go, I see no problem in just bringing that back to the board and showing us there's other avenues of access to that public land. It's just a clarification I would like to have. It doesn't mean I'm gonna say no if you're not gonna grant public access. I just would like to see more information on that coming forward.
I'm almost hesitant to, because of the debate over the bike path going from Redstone to McClure.
I think that we should actually drop this for now.
Okay,
I think it'd be
Just-
in your best interest and
I'll drop it.
everybody's
I
best
just don't want to put a roadmap out
I-
for people to go.
I understand, but yeah. Steve, let's hear from you.
So that's a good segue into the point I wanted to make was, and I would echo what Bill said, Open Space and Trails has kind of a penchant for wanting public access through most or many of the properties that they control. There are exceptions to that where to protect wildlife, for instance, on our Deer Creek property by Woody Creek, that the public's not allowed to go through there because that's to protect the wildlife. In this case, to me, what we would be protecting, if it is open space and trails that is the one that would hold the conservation easement, it would be protecting the agricultural heritage. It not only would be protecting the cattle grazing up in Cold Basin area, but it would be really helping to protect the viability of your ranching operations down by Carbondale. Because the harder you make it for you to get to your grazing lands, it gets harder and harder. Eventually, people give up and they say, you know, screw this, I'm going to sell my land or I'm going to do something else. You end up losing the agricultural heritage. And to me, that would be a really valid reason for doing a conservation easement supported by open space and trails. It's preserving the open space, it's preserving the wildlife habitat. And that's a valid enough reason for them to want to help preserve this land and keep it in your ownership, and not in public ownership, and not for public access to go through there to other public lands. So that's an argument we would have to make with open space and trails in negotiating an agreement on this. Thank you.
Can I have Greg go first and then you, Jocelyn? Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, great. Just a question. I'm listening and hearing. I appreciate conservation's a public benefit. We want to secure the land for the next 84 years. We want to keep agriculture viable. Of course, I think we all agree. We all agree with this, and they want to monetize the property clearly to the highest extent possible without it being developed, and I understand their motivation with this also. I guess my question once again is, and a comment and questions and comments tied together. What do inflated prices for land do to the values when a young rancher is trying to get into ag land and become a rancher or work ag? When the prices become so inflated, and also what does that do to our ability to purchase conservation easements in the future? If all of a sudden the prices are so much higher because we've got this speculative, floating and highly volatile TDR market, what is that going to do to the ability for people to actually get in and work land in the future? I think we need to be looking at that. And so I'm going to propose, and I also have to say, I think we need to make a motion to deny this application because this is for 2 TDRs. At the staff's recommendation for denial, I would like to make a motion that we approve that denial, and that with a very strong encouragement for the applicants to return and discuss and get a new appraisal in cooperation with our Open Space and Trails Department. So I'd like to make a motion that we do the denial. Of course, it could be up for discussion.
Yeah, can I have a point of clarification? Do we need to deny, or can we just continue it as is?
That's what I was asking Suzanne.
You may continue if you would like, but Greg's motion is to deny, but an action item that is available to the board is to continue, assuming you have a motion to do so and the necessary votes to do so.
Yeah.
Because by clarification, again, on behalf of the families, is if we deny, there's a time frame they can't bring back an application, and I don't want to delay this. I'd like to see if we can move it forward.
Suzanne can probably correct me, but I believe the time frame to bring forward another application in the event of a denial is 6 months, I believe.
I think so too.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So.
Can we abbreviate that?
No, it's a code, I believe.
What we're asking them to do is to go back and work with our own department. So I'm confused by that. Is there no way we can adjust the time frame on that?
It's written in the
What we're
land
really
use.
trying to do is
It's written in the land use code.
But we don't need to deny it. We can ask them to bring it back in a different form without the TDRs. That's what I asked Suzanne before. Do you want to speak to that, Suzanne?
Well, I mean, if you didn't deny, if you continued, I mean, this is the application that's in front of you. At some point, we would need an action on that application. If there was some other application that comes forward, I guess the continuance at some point, this could be withdrawn and the new application submitted. It would not be subject to that 6-month delay.
If
for a
this were
different
still,
application.
if this were still active.
Right, if it was just continued, it remains alive in our world. It's just,
And then they would be free to bring in a different one at any time.
They could withdraw the current and bring in a modified application.
Right, and I mean, there could be additional information submitted related to this specific request under this provision of the land use code. Again, if we're talking about some other type of application, I think at that point, we're looking at, a withdrawal and, a different application coming in.
But without a moratorium period?
Without a
Correct.
denial and a
Without,
6 month.
okay.
Right, it's just the denial that then triggers that
Yeah, okay.
6-month period.
And similarly, in connection with the continuance, the board could direct staff to reach out to Mr. Fales and the rest of the association and contact them about whatever the board would like. We'd continue to a date certain. The application would remain alive and would come back to this board at some point in the future after conversations between the property owners and open space staff has taken place, if that's the direction that the BOCC is heading with that.
Okay. Jocelyn?
I'm just wondering if the board has any appetite for considering the issuance of one TDR plus a negotiated open space and trails easement with an appraisal following the severance of the TDR. That would sort of get our non-ranching families where they need to be, and I'm just wondering if there's an appetite for that. Patty mentioned, certainly 2 TDRs weren't going to fly, maybe 1.
But Kelly, you had your hand up. Was that previous to Jocelyn's question?
Yeah, I'm trying to articulate my question and I'm struggling to do so. And it's for the board, I guess. I'm just wondering, if there's no agreement on a price for an open space deal, does that affect how we deal with this? You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
That was gonna be my question.
Well, that is the unknown, of
Yeah.
course, yeah, Patty.
I don't think we can do a TDR and then say, hopefully in the future we'll do a conservation. I think it has to come in, and I've never known us to purchase a conservation easement at the same time we're granting a TDR. It's either kind of one or the other. So Greg has a motion that.
Yeah, he
it
has a
hasn't been
motion.
seconded, does it?
That is
We're just waiting.
That is a point of order. Greg has a motion on the.
Purposes of discussion.
Okay.
What'd you say, Kelly?
She's gonna second his motion to deny.
You're seconding his motion? Okay, now we're in discussion on that motion.
Well, I'm gonna vote no for the denial. I would rather continue, so that'll be my position on Greg's motion. And then I'll be willing to make a motion if this one fails. No pun intended, Bill.
I have concerns about denying this as well because I don't want to set the moratorium for another application in place. I think we can move faster than 6 months to something that will work for you guys and for the county. So when we take it to a vote, I would also be a no vote. Greg?
I would also say one option that we all have here, especially the applicant, would be to withdraw this request for 2 TDRs right now. And that way, I don't think there would be a 6-month moratorium on the next iteration, as I understand RIE. So that's another option on the table that puts it back in the court of the applicant.
Greg, that is correct. If the applicant withdraws their application before the board makes a determination on the application, then they're essentially starting over with either filing a new application or not filing any application at all.
But that would mean they'd have to start
If the
all
applicant
over.
were to do that, I would amend my motion.
We've definitely done that before.
No, but let me just clarify. We have a motion on the table. There's been a motion and a second. We have to take action on that. And Greg, you could amend it. But the fact is, if they withdraw, they have to start over in the whole process.
I was gonna ask you,
That's a
what's
whole
the
new
delay?
fee, that's a whole new time frame. That's a whole new waiting in the queue. I think it would be much better if we just deny the motion that's on the table now, don't support it, and then bring back a motion to allow it to continue with a direction to staff, which we need to clarify as part of the motion.
Suzanne, what kind of delay do we have on a new application at this point? Best guess.
Do you have a crystal ball?
Long.
Long.
Is that a
So-
good enough answer?
No.
Yeah, I mean, again,
Really
to
long.
start all over, I mean, we're better off continuing to have other discussions and then, kind of see where this goes and then come back and either at that point this application is withdrawn or you take action on it. Again, we'd work to try and move something, but depending what that application is.
Right.
Is it just to the BOCC? Is it the P&Z and the BOCC, the Open Space Board? Again, we're in another 6 to 8 month process. I can't say. I don't know what it would be.
Right.
So I can't really tell you
understand.
that. But are we backed up?
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Can I make clarification from Suzanne? Is she suggesting we continue this as the easiest way forward, or are there just too many questions? It sounds like you have a lot of questions yet unanswered. When we look at how long this property has been in the hands of the current owners for 84 years or so, 8 months doesn't seem like that long time by comparison. I know everybody's impatient because they think they want the money, but I'm going to suggest 6 to 8 months is not a long time to sort this out and do it properly.
Do you want to answer his first question?
So yeah, in answer to this first question, I think the simplest action for you to take is to continue this application. Because then it gives staff the time to, because again, I don't know what alternative we're even considering at this point.
Yes.
So you're changing the staff recommendation from denial to continuance?
I'm not changing staff's recommendation, it's what the board's action would be. But again, if you're looking to see what other alternatives there may be and how that affects this application, I think the appropriate action would be to continue. Maybe Rye can
Okay.
have anything to add to that.
Go ahead, Ray.
I don't have much to add to that other than that continuing maintains the status quo. In addition, it allows the BOCC to provide some further direction to staff, what that might be, hypothetically, as I mentioned before, reaching out to the Cattlemen's Association or whatever to attempt to negotiate a conservation easement or establish a value of something like that. I don't know what BOCC may direct to do, but a continuance maintains a status quo now, today. A denial does not. An approval is an approval.
Steve?
So I'm going to advocate for continuation today. I don't think that those present in the room could make a decision today to withdraw the application right now anyhow, because there are many other owners involved, and I think they would have to probably consult with the other owners before taking an action like that. Continuing this to a later date gives the applicant a chance to talk among themselves and re-strategize. It gives a chance to start holding more new conversations with the Open Space and Trails that I think with having the Board of Commissioners involved in it, it might have a different outcome from the previous efforts. If we really want this to succeed, we can help it to succeed through the Open Space and Trails and conservation easement process. Or if there's another process out there that we have not landed upon yet, but it just, to my way of thinking, conservation easement is probably what would be the most successful thing. That then would also get money into the hands of those wanting to sell their interest in the property. I have heard from other people who have TDRs for sale that they're not able to sell TDRs right now. So that's getting a TDR is no guarantee any of these families are getting any money anytime in the near future unless you sell the TDR for way less than you really were hoping to get for it.
Thank you, Steve. Kelly?
Thank you. I just want to go back to sort of the details of this application.
I think it would help if you spoke up a little bit, Kelly,
Okay, sorry.
or turn up the volume on your computer or something.
I'm fading. I don't know how well
I'm
this
sorry.
computer microphone works. I just want to go back a little bit to sort of the details of just the application presented to us, which on its face, I don't think we would approve. I would vote to deny specifically what's being asked.
You mean you would
without
approve the resolution to deny?
I would approve the resolution,
Right.
yes. For not, because of what is being asked for two TDRs, no consideration of, parking or public access or those things. Steve brings up a very good point about it's, generally in land use hearings, we are able to kind of say, this is what we think we'd approve. We get some input from the client, and then, we amend the resolution. I guess I could use some clarity as if future hearings could accommodate that type of discussion on this if we continue. It's just a little bit of a strange profile because we're continuing for a different organization, a different department to have a conversation, not related to this land use hearing and what's being requested of us. I also could see like a hypothetical conversation that, if this was coming to us as like a site plan and activity envelope approval for one of these ranching families to site a ranch house that would be in support of these lands, we would be having a different conversation, right? About how do we accommodate that in the constraints of the site. And that's where I think we have not really had a conversation about those merits and criteria of this application. Like we haven't really, the reason staff has recommended denial is because they're saying, we think you can find an acre of land that is appropriate to site a house while mitigating for the surrounding constraints. That's why they're telling us to deny this. And we haven't had a substantial conversation related to that. So just contemplating like the reverse scenario of like, oh, if they were, we'd probably be trying to help them and figure it out because we want to preserve this agriculture. I'm projecting, so maybe that's not the case for the whole board. But, I do think that we either need to have that conversation because we'd have to justify some grounds of denial that were laid out in the resolution and whether or not we support those or we don't support those. So I just want to flag that for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Greg?
I appreciate what Kelly just said. I was contemplating amending my motion from denial to continue, and I guess it looks like that's the way the board is leaning. I would be willing to make an amendment of my motion, although I'm trepidatious about it because I think we're going to have a complicated situation here, and I think it's much cleaner to do what the staff recommends. And I do appreciate Kelly's comment that no, we haven't had that conversation entirely yet. So I can table it or I can amend it. I guess I'm looking for.
Well, I think we could probably go ahead and vote on your original motion.
Sure, let's do that. That's fine.
And I think let me clarify. Your motion is to approve the resolution for denial of the application of Redstone Pastures. Is that correct?
Based on staff recommendations, correct.
Okay, and we have a second. I believe it was Kelly. You seconded it. So all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay.
Nay. Anybody else?
I'm waiting. I'm saying nay.
Oh, you
Steve, are you saying nay?
I said nay, but I was muted.
Yeah, okay. So the motion fails.
So I would like to make a motion to continue this. We do need a date certain, is my understanding. To continue this discussion for the purposes of, and I'm gonna need help from the board, to revisit or have a new appraisal done on the property, and with the possibility of looking into a conservation easement purchase by Open Space and Trails. We'd have to go through the Open Space and Trails process to come back to the BOCC, or through another process available for conservation easements.
I was kind of thinking the motion could be simpler, where it would be that we would continue this with the intention of directing staff to investigate other avenues for conserving this property. I don't know, they're not that different, but what do you think, Raj? Should we?
Well, would Patty accept your amendment to her motion
I
that
will
way?
accept your amendment as long as it includes appraisal.
Including an appraisal, okay, a current appraisal.
I can second that.
Okay. Any discussion on that? Okay, so to be clear,
We need a date certain, though.
And Francie, I want to make sure that, I think you cleared it up enough. I just want to make sure we weren't making assumptions of what we're able to do. This would require cooperation of the applicant as well as our own open space board and staff. I just want to make sure we're not directing when we don't have the authority to direct. Is everything okay with that? I guess Ryan could answer.
I think Ryan's going to speak to
I'm not sure I understood the question, Greg. Could you clarify that for me? Sorry.
Well, when I heard Patty's motion, it made me wonder, I guess we can demand that we get an appraisal on the property. Do we need any cooperation, from the applicant before we proceed with anything like that?
Well, sure. We would ultimately, an appraisal you would usually take place with some kind of a contractual agreement reached with the property owner. We have had instances where we've done an appraisal in advance and then got under contract afterward. An appraisal process would take 60, 90 days at least. So that is a consideration, I suppose, but it is possible to do that.
Bill has concerns, I think.
Yes, Bill?
I really appreciate the discussion. I wish someone had come up with some ideas that we hadn't thought of. Just one point on the appraiser, Ryan, you said 60 to 90 days. My daughter Molly's the staff attorney for the Colorado Cattlemen's Agricultural Land Trust. He's involved in all their easements they're doing right now. For a variety of reasons, appraisers, and I agree with Greg that Mike Nash is good. He did ours on Cold Mountain Ranch and many more that I've been involved in with the Cattlemen's Land Trust. I think we're looking at 6 to 9 months to get an appraiser right now. And
That's
certainly a possibility.
From what Molly
days
tells
at
me.
least, but it could be many, many months.
It's a tough deal, and they're not cheap, and we've kind of spent our wad, and some members requested to put in our agreement to consolidate all our ownership, what I'll call the Mission Impossible statement, where this tape will self-destruct in 15 seconds or whatever. And this organization won't last forever. There are a lot of people who want to take it back into 8 individual ownerships, or 13 actually, depending on.
Well, I believe Open Space and Trails paid for the last assessment.
They did,
Appraisal.
and there was a misunderstanding, I think, on that previous appraisal, because one owner, without consulting with the other owners, told Dale that he would split the cost of the appraisal with it, but he didn't have any consultation or any authority from the other owners.
Well, I think if we didn't address the appraisal in the motion, that the staff would take the steps
Then we'd
necessary.
have to go back to the old appraisal, which nobody accepted anyway, so we'd be getting nowhere.
Well,
why would we have to go back to the
May I
old
make a
appraisal?
suggestion
Yes,
quickly?
please do.
Typically, an appraisal contingency would be part of negotiating the overall larger structure of the deal and the dollar amount that would be.
Yeah.
So if the board wants to continue this and provide staff the ability to have a conversation with the rancher, with the Cattlemen's Association, potentially a appraisal contingency could be part of an ultimate negotiation, but that is a limitation in your motion to continue, I suppose, is what I'm suggesting.
So when I made an attempt to amend your motion, it hadn't included appraisal, so it was that we would continue this to a date certain, and with the understanding that we would direct staff on what steps to take in order to help conserve this property. I
And
believe what I
leave
said.
the appraisal portion out of that and let it be up to staff. I'm okay with that
Okay.
amendment. That leaves that appraisal issue up to determination by the parties as they move forward.
Okay with that, right? That language?
It's either that or denial today.
I'm afraid we're sunk. I'm afraid we're, I'm
I
afraid
don't,
the
I
other
don't think we are. I think.
I don't think so.
I think the board wants to preserve this property, and
We're gonna find a way to conserve this
I
property.
appreciate that.
We will have an uphill battle, but we will make every effort to work with the other owners, most of whom aren't here. And if you could tell me what kind of date certain we're looking at, are we talking 90 days?
we can always continue again.
Okay.
I would look to you all to say, how long do you want, at least to come back and say
Right.
something, I guess,
Right.
Do
update
3
you.
months, within we have the opportunity to continue in 3 months.
I think that we can, work with the other entities, Open Space and Trail, and to expedite this, given the extenuating circumstances of your particular arrangement with the other owners and our desire to conserve this property. Greg, I'd like to get your comments in here, if you'd like to jump in here.
I'm good. Sorry, I had my hand up. I didn't
Okay.
realize it still had it. I'm done unless you need me to amend a second or amend,
We
No,
do,
we're
we
good.
do need a second for the amended motion by Patty.
I thought,
I'll second that.
Thank you.
thought she-
So, in terms of timing, Jocelyn, do you see any particular, or do you may have a recommendation to make in terms of how far out we should continue this till?
The most we can continue it under the code is 90 days.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for that.
so 3 months. And then we can bring it back and continue.
Yeah.
If need be.
I think 90 days we'll have a great idea one way or the other.
One
That's- Yeah.
So-
I really have,
Yeah.
I really have confidence in our ability to make this happen.
Yeah, sadly, we have the.
Trust us.
Okay.
Yeah, we're the government,
We're
just
here
trust
to
us.
help. Yeah, we're here to help.
The adjacent property sold in December, and I think a lot of people have gotten wind of that. It's a vacant 78-acre parcel,
For 1.2 million?
yeah, contiguous to this property, and then there was another one. Yeah, this all used to be part of the same property, but
Well,
Okay,
So
so
we put the
let's get a date. Are you looking, Suzanne?
we need to put that in the motion.
Yep, I mean, I'm looking in May, if we're talking,
Wait a minute.
so your meetings in May are the 10th or the 24th.
Whatever the 90 days would be, probably the 10th. Will you be here?
May is good for me. I'll be gone in June. May's good for me.
So I'm going to restate this motion because I think we need to have another amendment to add that date certain of 90 days. So the motion is to continue this for the purposes of allowing staff to discuss alternatives to preserve this property with a date certain of May the 10th, 2023.
And are you okay with the, thank you, Greg. Further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, it passes 5-0. We will,
And so you know, the
See
sun
you
came out for
before
a
the-
little while. That was a good sign.
don't be discouraged.
Thanks, Paul.
I think the baby got thrown out with the bathwater.
I don't think so.
No, our babies know how to swim.
I'm really hoping this is less of a gamble in the long run for you guys than TDRs. That's what I'm hoping.
Okay, be safe.
Thank
Drive
you.
carefully.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Jocelyn.
Thank you for your time and effort.
Thank you.
I think we're going to take a 5-minute break. I need one. Thank you, Grassroots. Unless I want to go. Welcome back to the BOCC regular meeting on Wednesday, February 22nd. We have finished our agenda except for open discussion. Rich, do you have any discussion for us today?
I do not. I neglected to let you all know that I was covering for John today because John was dealing with that incident we had this morning. So
I heard that you were.
he's where he should have been, and I'm where I should be. So I do appreciate the board. Thank you.
Greg.
Yeah, thank you. Just regarding today's incident, I think that, and I expect that we'll probably have a conversation and an examination of how everything went. As Kelly suggested earlier, it was kind of like a dry run for what an evacuation plan would be. And I think people will be asking us to look at how the whole thing went down, the response and everything else. So I just want to say, I want to make sure that stays on our agenda for a future agenda, and that we discuss that and make sure the public knows we're responding to the various comments, criticisms, and kudos that have been received by the police department and the authorities who were running this incident. And I do believe the incident management team was mobilized and with a command center and everything, as I understand it. And so it'd be great to just have a debrief on all that when the time comes. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Greg. Yeah, I just really hope that Alex gets the message that we really appreciate him being incident commander. That has got to be a difficult job.
Can I just add to that? I
Yeah,
just want to add to that real quick too. I think we learned it it wasn't that long ago, we had another issue with a gentleman who was threatening, we thought, the schools, is the communication and getting that information out as soon as possible. And I know I've had people call me and I have to remind them that our first priority was the safety of the teachers and the children. And we apologize if we didn't get the notice back to say shut down our building here, but we really had to focus on the priority. You have to triage in a disaster, and the triage at this point was the safety of the kids and the teachers and the staff at the school. And that's what we addressed first and foremost. But I think the communication thing, I know we're already looking at that, and I think this will just further the need to come up with a really, specific plan as to how to get the word out there sooner than later, and who needs to have that contact information, such as our emergency management person, Valerie, and then, Alex, it always does a great job. He's just incredibly stoic in the face of, disasters.
Yeah, he's an incredible asset for the county.
Yeah, so.
Well, if there's no further discussion, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Thanks,
Aye.
guys. Have a good
Aye.
weekend.
Feel better, Kelly.
See you, Stephen.
Are you going to Denver, Kelly?
I'm not.
You're not, okay.
I can't do that.
Well,
Yeah.
we can talk over the weekend maybe then, okay?
Okay,
Does that
whenever.
work?
You call me whenever.
Okay. All right, bye-bye.